At an auction house, the auctioneer presents the next hero, Sukuru Sumuragi, stating his job as a cook with rank G before starting the bidding. Those present scoff at the boy, considering him useless in the current situation and asking to pass on to the next hero. Sukuru then introduces himself in a flashback, displaying a vast menu in a cooking class without anyone even acknowledging him. He is surprised when a pretty girl named Ichinose praises his cooking, becoming petrified as he notices her talking to him. As the teacher leaves the room, the boy feels like something is about to happen. Right on cue, a bright light blinds everyone as they are transported to the auction house. The doors open and the room fills with people, including a group of elders whose leader declares to be the representatives of the United Kingdoms, and informs them that they are heroes summoned to their world using a ritual. He then explains to the confused children that they will verify their status and auction them to determine which kingdom they shall go to, from among the 9 kingdoms within the United Kingdoms, and 6 other countries. As the auction progresses, Ichinose touches the status plate, which classifies her as a rank S holy maiden, and she fetches an exorbitant price. While Sukuru's turn arrives, he is labeled as a rank G cook, being rejected by the angry bidders as he wonders what he did wrong. One of the elders declares that he is now free to operate wherever he wants, handing him a sword and some money as compensation for not being able to send him back to his world. He then leads him to a teleportation gate that will take him to a random country, noting that he doesn't belong to any of the other 15 countries, which the boy realizes is a rejection. Ichinose then approaches him, asking if they will meet again, and noting that she was chosen by the kingdom of Luxandil, he replies that they might run into each other in the future. Restrained by the house's staff, she states that she will see him again, and asks if he can say it back, which he does, before the old man pushes him through the teleportation door. Landing in the thick of the Bulf forest, Sukuru believes he was tricked. Grabbing the status plate, he checks his stats and skills, which include cooking, ignite, dismantle, detailed inspection, and ingredient storage. He uses detailed inspection to scan the forest, realizing he can use his skills to make a fire and find edible materials, and searches around until he finds edible mushrooms, storing them while hoping he doesn't run into monsters. He then notices a rat, trembling in panic and dropping his sword at the sight of it. Aware that the representatives knew he wasn't a fighter before throwing him into the forest, he curses the old man and the others, and promises to have his revenge. A giant cat then appears from among the bushes and starts chasing the terrified boy, who is now disarmed and only carries berries and mushrooms. The creature catches up and pommels him with his paw, sending him flying and leaving him mauled on the ground. Determined to get his revenge on those who put him in this situation and destroy the creature using him as a toy, he starts using Ignite repeatedly to set the cat on fire. As he starts to believe he can burn it to death, the creature pins him down with his paw, determined to stop him using the skill. Out of options, the cook uses Dismantle, which disintegrates the creature, and causes him to level up considerably and earn the Water Gun skill. Severely wounded but alive, he uses the water gun to hydrate himself, and healing food to find out that the steak from the giant monster can heal wounds. Crawling, he reaches a steak and begins to consume it, which instantly heals his body. Having fully recovered, Sukuru smiles, realizing that he can make it out of the forest. His status window reflects his new skills and his ascension to level 123 as a cook with improved stats. Still in the forest, Sukuru hides from a skeletal level 200 Sword Reaper, aware that he can't beat it. He then cooks a giant cat belly steak, enjoying its flavor until the status window notifies him that he has committed the new Night Vision skill. Realizing that cooking has such an effect, he proceeds to cook steaks from several parts of the beast to confirm his theory that the skill will depend on the part that is cooked. Aware that he will get more power the more monster meat he eats, he proceeds to fight a level 240 Bognon and a level 260 Dark Bat, cooking their parts and acquiring new skills in his quest to become strong enough to beat the representatives of the United Kingdoms. He then runs into a pack of level 150 Hyena Wolves, dispatching several of them with his water gun from a tree branch, until one of them is caught and devoured by a level 210 Hellbear. The creature notices him and roars, with Sukuru falling and barely dodging its maw using water gun. He then restrains it with wood magic and shadow binding before throwing a rock at it to no effect. As the creature breaks free, he barely manages to utter Ignite before the charging bear knocks him around and runs him through with his claws. Impaled, he reaffirms his desire to exact revenge on the old men so they suffer like he did. Unwilling to end like that, he takes the last resort and uses Dismantle, pulverizing the creature like he did with the giant cat, leveling up and getting new skills. As he recovers, he notes that he must be more careful, consuming the bear to get more powerful until another giant cat appears, upon which he blows it apart with Dismantle once again and consumes its flesh, noting that the outcome is always the same, since all the skills he has are for short-distance attacks and he is a chef, not a soldier. He finally acquires the Dark Magic skill, rejoicing at having a new power with which he can exact revenge. He is then notified that he has received the title, the Pervert, for not hiding his sensitive spots, only then realizing that his clothes had been torn during the last fights. A month has passed, and Sukuru now walks around the forest wearing a loincloth. While recalling all of the creatures he has consumed to become stronger, he feels cold and lonely, wondering if walking around the forest like a primitive man means anything, before having a breakdown due to the privations and loneliness he has suffered for the past month. He then notices the Sword Reaper from before, deciding to confront it. The cook tries to shadow bind it, but the entity uses transfer and appears behind him, before continuing on its way. He then tries binding it with wood magic and igniting it, using Detect Existence to gauge the monster's transfer skill. He then chases the still-burning creature, which cuts down some trees in its path, so they fall on Sukuru. As the boy dodges the debris, the monster strikes with his dark blade, striking the ground next to his head and causing the livid cook to use Dismantle once more. He then dons the Sword Reaper's cloak, making him invisible to lower-level monsters and protecting him from magic. He then attempts to grab the sword, but it starts to emit electricity and blinding light, before asking the surprised cook if he is a warrior. Sukuru sits by a stream, while a status window displays his stats, his multiple skills, and his uncomfortable title. As he eats and finishes committing Fabricate, the sword marvels at his ability to commit new skills through cooking, stating that he has never met any cooks like him. The boy sighs at the fact that the first conversation he's had is with a sword and not a person. He then recalls his encounter with the weapon, which asked if he was a warrior, stating that it would grant him its power if he had enough ability to own it. The blade asked if Sukuru believed in God, which he considered ridiculous, before pointing out that over the past month, he was forced to believe in God so much that he became sick of it. Despite never having believed in anything of the sort before arriving on that world, he wouldn't have accepted this kind of situation if there was no divine power. Recalling how he was summoned, reviled, and discarded, his constant brushes with death ever since, the hardships and privations he endured, he concludes that his suffering is due to God allowing humans to summon heroes and ignoring the decadence of his servants, and forgiving their arrogance. Since those events resulted in the current version of himself, he declared to the sword his determination to smash God's face, prompting the blade to laugh out loud. The boy challenged it to stop him, but the blade states he won't do it, finding him interesting and vowing to support his revenge. The sword told him to hold it and imagine the shape that suits him, while a status window reveals its name to be Kurokiri, titled the Death Sword. The blade then comments on his mysterious skills and surprisingly high level, noting that he is more powerful than demon kings and heroes of the past, noting he must be really lucky and capable to survive in the Bulf Forest for a month. Sukuru then asks if there are no human villages or towns nearby, and Kurokiri informs him that he is at the center of the forest, commenting that he believed he was deliberately heading there to defeat the king of the forest. The cook turns livid as he stands face to face with the level 300 Emperor Dragon that rules those lands, before turning tail and running for his life, screaming. Noting that the monster's level and shape are different from any beast he faced before, he wonders how to beat it. And when the blade points out that he can use him in battle, he reveals that he has never used a sword in battle before. The dragon then unleashes an Emperor Breath fire attack, torching the forest and leaving a rut on the ground, but sparing the boy due to his hermit's coat's protective qualities. Kurokiri yells at the unconscious Sukuru, trying to wake him up, as the dragon's mouth is about to snap around him. The boy manages to use dark magic to hide in the dragon's shadow, and as the blade urges him to fight back, he grabs it while consuming recovery food and starts to run away, uncertain of how to defeat the monster. This proves futile, as the dragon cuts his escape route off with his Emperor Breath, and despite not knowing if he can detect him even while cloaked with dark magic, the blade confirms that the beast will chase the cook until it catches him. An attempt to get closer is repelled by the Emperor Breath, so he decides to approach it while still undetectable, using Remove Presence and dismantling the creature. This fails, however, as every time he tries, the dragon senses him, and backs off before striking back. He tries to use other skills in vain, and as he wonders how it can still find him, the blade explains that it senses his murderous intent every time he activates Dismantle, rendering Remove Presence useless. Seeing no other way, he lunges once more using Fabricate to turn his murderous intent into love, long enough to touch the dragon and dismantle it, finally succeeding in slaying the beast. Sukuru finds a gacha prize machine in the forest, and Kurokiri points out that it must be there to help people with defeating the forest boss, urging the boy to turn it. He does it, hoping no monsters emerge, and a black ball comes out and releases a cloud of smoke. As the smoke clears, the cook is notified that he has earned the equivalent exchange skill, which the blade notes is a unique skill. It notes that the boy will have to kill the forest boss and wait for the gacha to reappear to get more skills. And as the boy seems reluctant, it suggests that he level up and learn swordsmanship, so that they can get used to each other. Tsukuru becomes proficient with the sword, slaying beast after beast and consuming their flesh to gain their skills, praising the sword for teaching him. As he relaxes on a magic bath made with ignite and water gun, the boy plans to ask the sword how to leave the forest, but it points out that his clothes are ragged and torn. Agreeing with him, he combines different fur items in his inventory to craft the all-black isekai suit. Kurokiri suggests that he use camo on himself and his equipment, to hide the fact that he isn't a normal person anymore, and he agrees, adopting the sword's name and hiding most information about himself. The boy scours the horizon from atop a cliff, jumping off and falling miserably before continuing on his path. He suddenly hears screams and sounds of battle in the distance, as a group of men attempt to capture a girl. The sword deduces they must be bandits and asks how they should proceed, and the boy decides to pass by using disguise in order to ascertain the situation, uneasy at the thought of helping the wrong people. As he walks past a carriage, a female voice cries out to him to help, surprising the cloaked boy and the princess's entourage. Several bandits jump onto the carriage from above, taking control of the horses and speeding away while leaving the guards behind. The carriage heads straight towards the cloaked Tsukuru, who performs a somersault and decapitates several bandits, landing on the carriage roof and continuing to hack at the bandits while the princess looks from within. As the carriage comes to a halt, Kurokiri asks the boy how it felt to end a human for the first time, and he pauses, before asking aloud why it was so easy. One of the princess's guards asks who he is, but the boy jumps off of the vehicle and continues walking as the princess, revealed to be a beastkin, wonders who he might be. After a month in the forest, Tsukuru finally reaches the town of Alegria and is welcomed by its residents, rejoicing at the thought of starting his life as a normal human while his stats are merged with Kurokiri's. Sometime in the future, two beastmen talk to an old man, noting that the person who suddenly appeared looked like a hero, noting that the man seems to have met a nice person and hoping to meet him someday. Back in the present, Tsukuru tours the town's market, purchasing several ingredients and storing them in his inventory. As he notes the poor quality of the weapons on display, Kurokiri praises itself as the greatest weapon in the world, and the boy wonders what would happen with equivalent exchange. He then asks aloud if the market sells rice, and a vendor tells him that he probably won't find it there since it is rare, but he might get it at the Seidel General Store. Tsukuru heads to the large commercial building and once inside is enthusiastically greeted by a beautiful beast woman who causes him to get flustered. Asking if the shop sells rice, he's led on by the girl, while the sword asks if he fell in love at first sight, but he retorts that he hasn't spoken to anyone in a long time. Kurokiri then mentions that he can buy her, pointing out the dark collar marking her as a slave. The beast woman shows him the different varieties of rice offered at the store, and the cook selects a type of egg rice and purchases 10 sacks, worth 60,000 gold. The size of the purchase prompts Seidel, the owner of the store, to come and greet him in person. The cook reveals that it is his first time there, having recently arrived in the city. But when the owner inquires as to where they should send the goods to, the man asks that he prepare the receipt, while storing all of the sacks in his inventory. The surprised Seidel then asks him if he has a large capacity item box, while offering to sell him anything else, stating that the store sells everything from food to slaves. Noticing that the last word piqued Tsukuru's curiosity, Seidel asks if he is interested in slaves, and merrily leads him on to show him what's on offer. As they pass through several glass stands, the owner explains that most slaves are just like normal people and have rights and choices, being protected by the law and really being more akin to maids. Seidel leads him further back, entering an area with cages filled with criminal slaves who don't have rights, and are normally bought as soldiers or to work in dangerous situations, being sent there instead of a prison so they can contribute to society doing things the general public doesn't wish to do. He then points to a particular girl leaning against the wall with an expressionless face, explaining that she arrived that day being blamed for the death of a child in a noble's house where she was working as a magician due to being the closest to the crime scene. Tsukuru asks if he believes her to be the culprit, but he replies that he doesn't know, before revealing that he was close friends with her father until he passed away 2 years prior, describing the girl as kind-hearted and dear to him. Kurokiri notes that this resembles the hero auction, before Seidel directly requests that the boy buy Kana. He refuses, and as the sword asks for the reason, he replies to it that he doesn't want to involve others in his plan for revenge. As he tells Seidel that he will have to look for someone else, the man states that if he doesn't take her away in that moment, she will be executed. The conversation is cut short by a man barging in stating that he will buy Kana. As Seidel greets him as Dokkum, the sword notes how rude he is, pointing out that he seems to be wearing a magician's clothes. As the owner is hesitant to sell the girl to the man, the sword points out that Tsukuru would profit from having a slave girl helping out, especially since she is already a magician. As the rude man confronts the boy, the latter insists that Seidel deal with him first, and offers to buy Kana for 100 million gold, shocking Dokkum and the owner alike. The magician protests, and as Seidel insists that Kana will be sold to the boy, he grabs him by the collar and they both exchange death stares. As the owner tries to defuse the situation, the man angrily departs the establishment. Kurokiri asks as to the motives behind Tsukuru's change of heart, and the boy points out that it is due to his decision to destroy everyone and anyone who dares displease him. Seidel smiles and promises to pay him back for what he did that day, and as the boy departs with Kana, he thinks on how his hunch proved right, noting that he couldn't use appraisal on him, only seeing his cloaked and basic stats. He is sure that the boy will protect Kana, and reassures his departed friend that his daughter's future will be very bright and exciting. Back at his inn, Tsukuru stares at a window while thinking on how Seidel charged him full price for Kana despite it being a favor. His plans to leave as soon as possible have been changed, since he needs to get some money and let Kana rest until she can speak. Sometime later, the boy cooks a meal, while the girl stares at him blankly while sitting on the floor. He offers her the medicinal food, hoping that she likes it, and telling her to eat as much as she likes, and is surprised when Kana grabs her plate and sits on the floor, proceeding to eat with her hands. He snatches the plate back and asks what she is doing, and is shocked when she reveals that slaves eat on the floor, and Kurokiri confirms this, noting that she is still thinking as a slave. He dismisses this, insisting that she sit on the chair and eat on the table using utensils. The girl complies and begins to eat one of the dishes, and while she does this, Tsukuru notes how elegant her way of eating is, and how different her aura is from the other slaves in the pens. He asks her if the food tastes good, noting his cooking skills, but fails to get any response from the girl, and wonders if the medicinal food can cure her mind as well as her physical wounds. Suddenly, Kana starts tearing up, and drops her knife, finally grabbing her face with both hands while saying, "Dolce-sama." As the girl cries in her bed, Kurokiri urges the boy to calm down, since the tears prove that his medicinal food succeeded in healing her mind. Nevertheless, the boy notes how depressed she looks and wonders what they did to leave her in such a state, noting that nobles are all bastards. Sometime later, the sword warns Tsukuru, and the boy senses the presence of 5 enemies approaching, considering them to be small fry. He easily dispatches 4 of them before they can even realize what is happening, approaching the 5th from behind while wearing a bear head hood. The cook easily overpowers and disarms the would-be assassin, asking who sent him, before performing a slashing attack with the man's knife against some crates as a show of force. He continues to question the terrified man, believing that he was sent by the nobles who banished him to the forest and vowing to get his revenge. The confused assassin states that he doesn't know who the boy is, and that they were simply ordered to dispatch Kana without any further information, being paid good money for the hit. He also tells Tsukuru that had he known he was fighting someone like him, he wouldn't have taken the job. The boy then coldly knocks the man out. The sword asks if he doesn't want to find out who is behind the hit, but he merely replies that he can already guess what is happening, before announcing that they must leave town sooner than expected, realizing that they have gotten themselves into a troublesome situation. Inside the inn, Kana wakes up and looks at the window as revenge nears. Tsukuru uses the equivalent exchange skill to trade intuition for clean, and proceeds to clean his entire outfit, noting that he should focus on keeping a tidy look while in the city. He plans to have Kana wear his coat later, noting that she hasn't had a proper bath yet, and that her nightmares seem to be gone. Deciding to prepare something for her to eat, Kana reminisces on her past, recalling how she entered the service of a noble family after her father died, being warmly welcomed and meeting Dolce, grateful to be able to work for such kind people. As she wonders how things came to the current state, she recalls the time when her happiness was shattered, as one day when she was merrily sweeping the floor outside of the castle, another servant came screaming, saying that Dolce was attacked by some ruffian. Alarmed, she rushed to the scene, finding the injured boy laying on the ground and bleeding profusely from a wound in his chest. While begging him not to die and preparing to use her magic to heal him, she wondered where the ruffian was, and why Dolce had been alone there. Her best efforts proved useless, since his wounds were too deep for her to heal, or even stem the bleeding, and despite her pleas, the boy expired in her arms. Dockham then arrived, asking what happened, and Kana was arrested for the murder, with wild accusations being brought against her, and the servant falsely stating that he saw her stab the boy. An incriminating letter was also placed in her room, and the nobles pressed the narrative that she lured Dolce to a trap for money, despite her wholeheartedly denying the charges. Sent to the general store, she was treated like an animal and became gaunt and broken. She found the gruel she was fed disgusting, and after snatching her uneaten bowl, another slave encouraged her to eat, stating that they would soon be sold and sent to the mines, losing all rights and being forced to work until death. Nearly catatonic, Kana wondered why all of this was happening to her and what she did wrong, believing that this wouldn't have happened if Dolce was still alive and unsure about what to do. She was only pulled from her state by Tsukuru purchasing her, recalling how he cooked her a meal and instructed her to eat at the table. She hadn't tasted proper food in some time, and despite not being hungry, she didn't dare disobey her new master and ate regardless. Her eyes opened wide after tasting the delicious food, and she continued to eat until she began seeing the deceased Dolce before her, smiling and reassuring her while telling her not to cry, which caused her to break into tears. In the present, Tsukuru points out that he is running out of money, being hardly able to cover lodging costs. He stops eating as he notices Kana waking up, asking her if she is hungry. The girl eats ravenously, asking for more helpings after having eaten 6 pots of food, and both the boy and Kurokiri wonder if she is even human. Noting that she seems to be recovering as her face has regained some color and she has happily become livelier, he asks her if the food is good. He is frozen in place as she happily states that it is, and Kurokiri taunts him for his reaction. But he soon lets out a scream when he notices Kana falling to the ground. He nervously approaches the girl, wondering if she ate too much or had an allergy, but the blade tells him to calm down, noting that she just fell asleep. As the smiling girl sleeps in his arms, Tsukuru wonders what that's supposed to mean, and what her deal is. Tsukuru shows off his cooking skills to Kana, who wolfs down dish after dish with ravenous hunger. She enjoys the breakfast he cooked for her, noting that his cooking is really good, though the boy isn't used to getting praised and merely states that he is glad that the girl is feeling better. Kana happily continues eating, but becomes distressed as she drops some of the food on her dress. Apologizing profusely, she starts heading to the well to wash the dress and herself. And though Tsukuru points out that it would be weird to use the well for that, she replies that it would be alright, since she is a slave. Having none of it, the boy uses his cleaning power to clean the girl and her clothes, before handing her a package containing new clothes he made. She quickly puts on a new set of tailor-made embroidered brassiere and shorts, finding the clothes excellent and asking which country the underwear comes from, to which the nervous boy replies stating Japan. Inwardly, the girl wonders about Japan, also recalling that before she was imprisoned, heroes were summoned from another world to defeat the Demon Kings, but one was rejected by all countries. The cook then properly introduces himself as Tsukuru Sumuragi, causing the girl to realize that he is the rejected hero, and conclude that his kindness towards her might stem from his own experience being abandoned in the world. Kana then gladly introduces herself in turn, asking to be treated well and promising to obey his orders, and the boy then asks her to show him the city. As they walk the streets, Kana shows Tsukuru the various shops in town, noting the highlight of each establishment as well as a park and several restaurants. She then leads him to the best weapon shop in town, explaining that the owner was a friend of her father and inviting him to go have a look while she waits. He declines, however, and when the girl notes he might find better weapons than his sword, unaware of its true power, he explains that he is broke, and was wondering what kind of business he should start. Noting that he is a cook, he suggests something that Kana openly decries as absurd. She notes that he cannot open another restaurant in town, much less as an outsider with no connections, but he and Kurokiri are oblivious to this, having sensed people following him from the inn and deciding to leave the area since they don't sense any hostile feelings. Tsukuru asks her to show him Seidel's shop, and the girl agrees, asking if he knows the merchant, noting that she lost her memories between her imprisonment and that day's morning. Believing him to be the right person to ask about opening a store, they head there and are greeted by the Beast Woman clerk, who runs away screaming for Seidel and returns with the merchant, who tearfully hugs Kana, seeing her back to normal. The man asks how he can express his gratitude, but Tsukuru replies that he is there to ask a favor. Despite Seidel's initial enthusiasm, he soon notes that he can't help, since rice food isn't popular in the area and there are many diners. And he would also need the approval of the government and the merchant guild to set up shop. The cook insists that Seidel appraise his food before turning him down, and he shows him some status-increasing onigiri, which the merchant soon recognizes. With gold signs in his eyes, Seidel suggests that he use his shop for his diner, seeing a huge business to be made and ironing out the details while Kana looks on in confusion. unable to see these skills and stats. Outside the store, Tsukuru and Kana discuss the endeavor, when he is confronted by two beastmen, who identify themselves as Rotten and Goliath, vassals of Count Abbas, and they ask him to come with them. The boy asks if Kana can come along, and as Rotten notes that it might trigger bad memories, he consults the girl, leaving the choice to her. They arrive at the Count's castle, being greeted by a butler and ushered to the parlor. As they head there, a maid recognizes Kana and asks how dare she return after killing Dolce, causing her to tear up, until Tsukuru grabs her by the hand to reassure her. In the parlor, they are greeted by Count Dengaro Abbas and his daughter Altelius, who Kana recognizes. Altelius thanks Tsukuru for rescuing her in the road some days prior, revealing that she sent for him to thank him in person. Her father insists on rewarding him personally, offering 10 million gold and a sword with their family crest as a sign of their gratitude. Tsukuru is shocked by the vast sum, and even more so when the Count reveals that the sword will allow him to be treated as part of his following in the country. And as he asks for the reason behind this generosity, the Count reveals that he wants to ask a favor. He states that Kana killed his son Dolce, before clarifying that he doesn't actually believe that to be true. The boy asks why she was blamed, upon which the Count explains that having no proof of her innocence and suspecting foul play, he used his influence to change the penalty from death to imprisonment, and entrusted her to Seidel. He reveals that all those present believe in Kana's innocence, bringing the girl to tears, and the Count then reveals his request. He wants Tsukuru to find the real culprit for Dolce's murder. As Seidel's clerk embraces Kana, the merchant informs Tsukuru that he's completed preparations for selling their status-increasing onigiri, with a contract of 100 pieces per day for a whole month, and a selling price of 10,000 gold pieces or even more. He notices the boy's absent-mindedness, and as he asks, the boy reveals that he doesn't need the money anymore, revealing the Abus short sword. The boy recalls the Count entrusting him with finding Dolce's killer, having given him 5 million gold in advance, and a promise of a further 10 million once he succeeds. He asked what would happen to Kana, and Goliath explains that she would be free of all her charges and freed from her collar. Altelius enthusiastically asked her to work there again and have tea together, revealing that with her and Dolce gone, she was lonely. Seeing this, Tsukuru agreed to the request, and as he notes that he's just an amateur, the Count grins, revealing that he heard of his behavior in town, and strongly believes that he can fulfill the task. The boy found him simple-minded, but nevertheless agreed. Back in the present, he finishes telling Seidel the story, explaining that he has been at the mansion since the previous day, and the merchant wonders if it will really be fine since Dolce's killer may still be around, worrying about Kana's safety. The cook admits that there may be some risk, but points out that Kana would still be in danger even if they left town, since some might try to silence her, and he doesn't want her to live in a constant fear in an unknown place. He notes the convenience of freely entering the Abus mansion, pointing out that it was Denegro's wish, so the merchant relents and asks him to save Kana at all costs. As they depart, Kurokiri notes how Tsukuru seems to have become fond of saving people, wondering if he has lost his heart. The boy denies this, noting that some people believe in Kana's innocence, and he doesn't want her to be the target of someone's revenge, planning to resolve the incident and leave her behind in the town. Back at the mansion, a maid named Hannah greets them, and states that she was sent by the princess to show him around. Tsukuru wishes to talk to Rotten, but the maid urges him to wait since he is currently talking with his wife. He is surprised that the Beastkin is married, and Kana tells him that his wife Alicia is really beautiful, and they have a smart son named Cloud, which he thinks is irrelevant. As they walk down a hallway, they run into Dockham, who recognizes them and angrily screams at them, demanding to know why they are there, stating that the mansion is no place for a lowborn like Tsukuru. The boy coldly responds that the place is even less for people who scream at the top of their lungs, causing the furious magician to strike Tsukuru in his face with full force. Kana recoils, but the boy remains unmoved and unhurt, while Dockham's hand is damaged. And as the screaming magician asks what he did, he merely notes that he did nothing, while inwardly pointing out that at level 30, there was no way the magician could hurt someone at level 300 like Tsukuru. The Count's guards approach, alerted by the commotion, and Dockham demands that they capture Tsukuru, while showing his injured hand, suggesting that he might harm the Count. The guards reach for their weapons and ask the boy to come with them, and he readies to fight, but Kana stands between them, urging Tsukuru to not harm the guards. Rotten arrives, calling out his men for pointing their swords at a dear guest. Dockham shows him his broken hand, stating that Tsukuru made an excuse to hit him, and he got wounded due to stopping his blow with his fist, asking the commander if he intends to let him go. Quickly gauging the truth, Rotten asks the magician to confirm his statement, stating that he doesn't believe that he blocked the attack since his entire arm would have been destroyed. Despite Dokum's incredulity, the commander recalls that he saw Tsukuru fight on the road against the assassins, surpassing even him in skill, noting that everyone who fought him ended up worse and telling the magician to apologize. Dokum refuses, believing Tsukuru to be level 20 at most, but Rotten merely shrugs it off and asks him to be forcefully taken to the infirmary, later admitting to the boy that it embarrasses him to serve together with such a shameless man. Kana suddenly falls to her knees, telling those present that they just gave way, and the cook asks the maid to take her to his room so she can rest. Rotten then kneels before them, apologizing for what just happened, and vowing to prevent such things from happening in the future. Kana is shocked to see the commander apologizing to a slave such as herself, but the man promises to restore her honor, stating that he is indebted to her. Tsukuru then notes his timely arrival, revealing his desire to talk to him about the incident, to which Rotten gladly complies. While Tsukuru talks with Rotten, Hana walks down the corridor, until she is intercepted by someone. The cook finds the report on Dolce's murder half-hearted and incomplete, noting that even someone like him can see that it is worthless, while lamenting the cultural level of that world. Kurokiri states that someone plotted the murder, and the boy concurs, deducing it must be someone with influence. He ponders the matter, believing that it is not limited to the Abis family and might be caused by someone targeting the Count's status or possessions. He also ponders why Kana was chosen, being a mere apprentice magician, and laments being unable to use detailed appraisal to identify the culprit, wondering if he has another skill that might do the trick. He then notices Hana, who tells him that Altelius ordered her to bring sweets and tea to Kana, but she doesn't have an appetite. Entering the room, he finds her semi-catatonic on the floor, reacting with horror as he approaches her, while recalling the past events. She apologizes, but he informs her that Rotten told him the entire story. Kana regrets not being strong enough to save Dolce, since a more powerful magician such as Dokum could have saved the boy, and he was right to get angry at her for her weakness. Recalling how he was cast aside at the auction, Tsukuru is enraged, and asks the girl if she wants to become strong, which the girl confirms, screaming in tears. Tsukuru then cooks up vast amounts of stat-increasing food, telling the shocked girl to eat up. After consuming large quantities of food, she only earns wind magic and forest magic, and as he shifts to leveling her up, the girl asks him to focus on the investigation rather than her training. He states that he doesn't intend to postpone either, and asking her to not reveal what he will show her, proceeds to use ghost summoning to conjure a powerful Lich Destroyer from beyond, consuming a lot of his magic in the process. The Lich asks to be bestowed a name so he can follow Tsukuru's commands, and after he calls him base, the creature consumes even more of his magic. The haggard boy then states that he wants the creature to do something, but Base cradles his face with his skeletal hands and states that he already knows what's on his mind, departing to start his search. Tsukuru is trained by the experience, but once Kurokiri notes that Kana has become unconscious, he shakes the girl to her senses. Suddenly, there's a knock on the door and the boy opens it to see Altelius outside. The princess notes that she felt a dangerous presence in his room, but the boy tries to brush it off, while recalling that she was also really sensitive to sound and presence back on the road. She tells him that Hana informed her of Kana's condition, and she wished to invite them for tea in the garden. And despite having eaten a lot recently, the girl still agrees. Tsukuru is amazed by the garden, and while the princess bids them to sit, Kana refuses since she is a slave. Altelius then recalls the happy time she spent with Kana and Dolce in the garden, and suddenly notices the cook hasn't touched his tea. The boy tastes a sip and praises its flavor, while inwardly noting that it was poisoned, having detected it with appraisal and being immune due to his high level. As he wonders if the princess or the maid were responsible, Altelius asks about the investigation, and Tsukuru notes its slow progress. The princess notes that her father, Rotten, and Goliath were not present the day of the murder, but she recalled someone talking to Dolce that day, clearly remembering the sound of armor clanking. The boy is surprised, never having heard this, and Altelius frantically screams that she told this to the knights, but they refuse to write it down, insisting that she couldn't have heard that and she was mistaken. As she sobs, Tsukuru notes that she does have sharp ears, and wonders if she is telling the truth or is lying, since the poison isn't working. Looking at Hana, he summons Base and asks him to investigate the maid. In a flashback, Ali recalls how she, Dolce, and Kana played ball in the garden, until the boy broke a branch and they were scolded by the housekeeper. Looking at the branch in the present, the princess is informed by Hana of Kana's condition, and she tells the maid to prepare tea in the garden while she goes to talk to her. Tsukuru recaps what he has learned about Dolce's crime up to that point in chronological order, and is pulled out of his thoughts by Kana's screams as she is chased around by monsters in the Bulf Forest while wearing lewd magician clothes. About 1 hour earlier, the girl expressed her uneasiness at walking around in the high-stat and revealing clothes Tsukuru made for her, but the boy pointed out that she said she would do everything to get stronger. He then announced that they were heading to the Bulf Forest, grabbing the girl just as she pointed out how dangerous the place was, and dashing off using haste. Back in the present, the terrified Kana keeps dodging the monsters, while Tsukuru urges her to fight. She falls down, but the boy dispatches the monster chasing her and asks if she wants to become stronger, to which she tearfully replies that she can't fight, and is now forced to face strong opponents. The cook then turns around as if to leave, and as the fallen monster attacks her, she recalls Dolce's death, repeatedly using Fire Javelin to defeat the creature while Tsukuru looks on. She levels up considerably, much to her surprise, and the boy reveals that he left the creature with 1 HP so she could earn the reward. He then urges her to continue, offering recovery food if she takes damage, which causes her to curse him as she prepares to fight. That evening, the cook carries the exhausted Kana back to the mansion, planning to give her recovery food and expecting Base to return soon. Before doing that, he conceals her vastly increased stats, disguising her level of 158 as a level 25, and hiding many of her new skills. Goliath confronts him in the streets and asks about the girl, and he explains that he has been training with her, which gladdens the knight. He in turn reveals that he is out searching for a bear roaming the streets, and invites him to dine at his favorite place, quietly warning him to be careful due to roaming people from the slums. Kana wakes up at the mention of dinner, and the three soon find themselves at an inn. Tsukuru doesn't drink and questions Goliath drinking on duty, but he boasts of his capacity to handle alcohol and fight. He then suddenly bursts into tears, apologizing to Kana for being away with the Count when Dolce was murdered, believing he could have saved him. Tsukuru coldly asks if all decent knights were with Dengaro, and Goliath yells that he is wrong. He explains that Rotten and himself went with the Count with some of their subordinates, while Jabon, the third knight's squad leader, stayed with his squad and half of theirs, and the Count also had many talented magic knights led by Dockham at the mansion. The knight then tearfully wonders how Dolce slipped past them and got out, and the cook realizes with that many knights, it would be impossible to know who was talking with the boy. Goliath escorts them back to the mansion, and as Tsukuru and Kana enter their room, they are greeted by Base. The Lich Destroyer greets his master, revealing that his investigations bore fruit and offering him to see it with his own eyes. The room begins to change as Base virtually recreates what he has seen, and Tsukuru's eyes are fixed on a portrait that Kana recognizes as Dockham's wife. The creature explains that the space recreates Dockham's home office to the last minute detail, standing over the desk and revealing what his master was looking for by opening a drawer full of correspondence, and letting one float to Tsukuru. Grabbing it, the boy realizes it is a letter for Dockham written by Arefusel. Though the name sounds unfamiliar, Kana then reads the letter, which explains that the writer entrusted the disposal of Dolce to someone, promising to make Dockham a baron for his contribution. The girl turns livid after reading this, and while Tsukuru is impressed that Base got this, the creature replies that guards and locks are meaningless for information that can be salvaged and erased, handing him the real letter. As he stores it in his inventory, Tsukuru sees Kana sweating as she realizes that Dockham wasn't angry at her for failing to save Dolce, but instead knew the culprit, and arrested her instead. Patting her shoulder, the cook urges her to calm down, explaining that it is common for a fool who has received promises of power to turn his back on his master. He then asks her about Arefusel, and she reveals that he is a count who has plenty of interaction and friendship with the Abus family, believing it would be ridiculous that they would aim at Dolce's life. Still needing more information, the cook sends Base to continue his search. Kana drops on a couch, not believing what is happening, and fearing Altelius might be in danger. Tsukuru is unsure about this, deducing that if Ali was in danger, they would have tried to poison her along with him, and wondering if she was someone else's responsibility. He concludes that for now, no one other than Dengaro can be trusted and heads off to look into it, while telling Kana to not open the door to anyone but him. Recalling that Ali noticed his presence concealment and camouflage, the boy pulls the hermit coat from his inventory to become unrecognizable to those of lower level. Thus concealed, he roams the mansion, seeing the knights training outside and landing on the courtyard to examine it further. He hears two knights complaining about Jibon's strictness, and noting that he doesn't wish to lose against the other two beastmen captains, Rotten and Goliath, especially since he was the one in the mansion when Dolce was offed. The knights then note that the magicians were present too, and that Dockham and his followers went too far after taking over as head magician in replacement of the more capable Messiah after the latter's demise. This former head mage is revealed to be Kana's father, and the young knights even hint at rumors that the man was removed by Dockham. Another knight warns them to keep quiet, else Dockham's servants hear them and have them dismissed, before talking of Tsukuru's onigiri. Noting that there are more people attached to Dokkum than he thought, he walks down a hallway until a ball bounces before him and a young Beastman boy resembling Dolce picks it up. A voice calls the child Cloud, and the boy runs to his mother, while Ali greets him. She introduces the woman as Alicia, Rotten's wife, and the boy as their son Cloud, and the boy bows to him as a greeting. The princess explains that they often go to the mansion to cheer her and her father up ever since Dolce's demise, explaining that she's the niece of her father's friend, Count Arefusel, which shocks Tsukuru. Ali explains that they are going to have breakfast, and she sent a maid to fetch him and Kana, asking them to join, while elsewhere Hana knocks on Kana's room door, with cold eyes. As they head to get breakfast, Tsukuru puts the pieces of the puzzle together. Arefusel's letter and his niece Alicia and her child visiting the Abus family regularly makes him doubt their intentions. He summons Base, playing dumb once Ali feels its presence, and then comments on how close she seems to be to Rotten's family. She then reveals that the Rotten family is the head branch family for the Abus, and they have served as chiefs of the Night Squad for generations, with Rotten's father currently holding the position. Tsukuru then realizes as the closest relatives to the Abus family, Rotten or Cloud are the most likely successors in the event that Dengaro doesn't have children. He bluntly asks if it would be possible for Cloud and Ali to marry, causing the girl to blush and the boy to bluntly deny it, considering himself unworthy to become Ali's husband, as well as being smaller, younger, and less educated. The princess teases him, stating that her father might approve in 10 years, while giggling, but Tsukuru notices Alicia's smile with concern. Arriving at the huge dining hall, they run into Count Dengaro and Hana, with the latter informing that Kana didn't answer the door. Kurokiri wonders if she was killed, but Tsukuru points out that she is too strong to be offed by her now, and he would notice if she were. Resuming her duties, the maid pours Tsukuru some water, which once again contains poison, and he notices the girl's hands shaking. Noticing his cold demeanor, Ali asks him if something is the matter and offers to call for Kana, but he brushes it off. The Count then asks him how the investigation is going, surprising Alicia, as he informs her that the boy has been entrusted with investigating Dolce's murder. Both her and Cloud apologize for coming to play in such a serious time, but Dengaro thanks them for cheering him and Altelius up, causing her to sigh in relief as Tsukuru watches. The boy explains that he hasn't gotten any conclusions but has found a lead, which gladdens the Count and worries Alicia. Later, Alicia speaks to an armored person in secret. Elsewhere, Cloud dashes towards Tsukuru and asks if he can do anything to help with the investigation of Dolce's murder. He denies having been sent by his mother, stating his desire to become a knight for the Abus family once he grows up, and declaring that he's been practicing every day to protect the family. He also tells Tsukuru that Altelius and Dolce always treated him very kindly, and he loves them as if they were siblings, being unable to forgive whoever offed Dolce and blamed it on Kana. Tearing up, he expresses his fear that Ali might be in danger and his determination to protect her in Dolce's stead, and Tsukuru notes his determination. Praising him, he entrusts him with Ali's protection, which the boy energetically accepts in a way resembling his father. Arriving in his room, Tsukuru uses water fountain to awaken the sleeping Kana, as they head to Seidel's shop. There he delivers the promised onigiri to the ecstatic merchant, while the clerk asks to pick a new outfit for Kana, bluntly stating that her current appearance is weird. The shocked boy tries to defend the outfit, but the girl insists that she looks like a pervert, and it constitutes slave abuse, so he relents. As the girl picks clothes, Tsukuru heads out, leaving Kana in Seidel's care. Away from the town, he and Base inspect a pile of bloody bones that the Lich Destroyer has identified as the remains of the 3 men who dispatched Dolce, having the same killing intent that the creature sensed at the crime scene. Base explains that they were dragged there to be consumed by beasts, and Tsukuru realizes that they were trying to dispose of the evidence, lamenting that they can't use bones as proof, but the creature eerily offers to handle it. Returning to the shop, he sees Kana try out several outfits, and he selects a relatively scant outfit and purchases it. Outside, he asks her if she doesn't want to wear it right then, but she explains that it is important to her since he bought it for her, promising to treasure it and wear it on special occasions. The boy sighs and slaps Kurokiri as it laughs at him. Suddenly, a man wielding a knife attacks Kana, but his attacks fail to pierce her skin, only tearing through her new clothes. More men appear and state their murderous intent, and despite Tsukuru telling Kana to fall back, the girl bursts out in rage, determined to punish them for damaging her new clothes, smacking the first assassin right in the face. As the other 2 begin to attack, she pulls out her scepter, blasting the second one with several fire javelins. The third one freezes at the sight of this and is soon restrained by Kana's wood magic, along with his comrades, while Kana asks the reason for their attack. Tsukuru explains that it is probably related to the investigation, revealing that another group tried to silence her earlier and they even tried to poison them. He summons Base, shocking the girl, and holding Dokkum's letter, he states that they are going back to the Abus family. Back at the Abus mansion, Dockham barges into a room screaming, demanding to know the meaning behind the statement that the culprit of Dolce's murder has been found. He freezes when he realizes that Count Dengaro, Altelius, Hannah, and the 3 Night Squad commanders are present, and Goliath chastises him for the outburst while Tsukuru mocks him regarding their previous encounter, earning a death stare in return. Rotten then explains that the boy asked for the presence of all those currently in the room. The cook asks him for the whereabouts of his wife and son, finding out that they are at the training ground and stating that there's no need to get them. The Count asks Tsukuru if he will reveal what happened to Dolce, and he agrees, but first asks those who are present to vow to never reveal what they are about to see in the room, to which they all agree. Raising his hand, the boy then commands Bass to manifest behind him, causing the knights to react to protect their lord and ask Ali to stand back. The princess, however, recognizes the creature's aura and realizes it is not a threat, and Bass thanks her for her understanding, while introducing himself as Tsukuru's servant, revealing that he spirit-summoned Dolce's soul in accordance with his master's command. Altelius is shocked as Dolce's soul materializes before her, trying in vain to touch him while falling to her knees. Tsukuru tells her to ask a question he doesn't know the answer to prove that it really is the boy's soul, and she asks for the color of the ball that they used to play with in the courtyard. The soul replies correctly, so she asks for the name of his late mother, which he states is Monica. Dolce then asks for forgiveness for departing before his father and sister, and the princess apologizes for not being there to protect him, wishing it had been her instead. He reassures her, stating that he wishes them both to cheer up and live long lives for him, asking for this wish to be heard while his sister, father Goliath, and Rotten stand in tears. Tsukuru bluntly cuts the moment short, asking to continue with the meeting, to which the Count agrees. He asks if Kanna offed him, which he vehemently denies, explaining that he was dispatched by 3 strangers, having been lured outside by being told that Kanna was there, with the men fleeing after the deed, with one of them returning with the girl. He then recalls that Kanna tried her best to save him, but he lost consciousness in her arms. Dengaro starts to ask a question about the assailants, when Dockham screams at him to stop, stating that Tsukuru might be trying to deceive him, but his lord shuts him up. Tsukuru reveals that the 3 men were living in the slums, and as the Count begins to order Goliath to go there, the boy continues to explain that they are no longer there, nor in town. As the enraged Dengaro asks if they ran away, Tsukuru orders the 3 men's souls to appear, and Kanna recognizes one of them as the man who led her to the crime scene, and the Count realizes that they testified against the girl in the trial. Grabbing Jiban's sword, he lunges at the men, but Tsukuru merely explains that it is pointless to slash at them since they are long deceased, and thus he can't touch them. He acknowledges this but can't contain his anger nor accept that the culprit for the crime has already departed. Hearing this, Tsukuru offers to finish his report, stating that he has identified the real culprit behind the crime and revealing that someone else was involved in the murder. He asks Dolce to identify the man who approached him in front of Ali's room, telling him Kanna was waiting outside of the walls, and also asks the 3 men who ordered them to off the boy, telling them to all point at the culprit if he's in the room. In unison, all 4 souls raise their arms and point straight at a shocked Jiban. Jiban vehemently denies knowing anything about the crime, begging Dengaro to believe him, and stating that it is all part of Tsukuru's plot. Rotten replies that they will hear his side later, and the knight insists that it is a total misunderstanding, before stepping back. He attempts to flee only to be smashed to the ground by Goliath, who restrains him and states that his escape attempt only proves his guilt. Jiban frantically denies being behind the crime, stating that he just did as he was told, suddenly flinching, and beginning to contort before his head explodes. Goliath is confused at what just happened, since he only pushed the man down, turning to see Dockham holding his arm up after having used a spell. The magician states that he tried to capture Jiban, but his aim was off, to which Goliath replies that he already had him under control. Dockham then replies that it took a while for the spell to take effect, and he didn't stop it since he was unsure if the knight would have acted violently. Meanwhile, Tsukuru continues to sit calmly while playing with a paper plane, noting the magician's stupidity, before commanding Bass to summon Jiban's soul, explaining that now the man can't lie and thanking Dockham for his assistance. He then tells the Count to ask any questions he might have, leaving it up to him to hear the rest. Dengaro then asks who ordered the hit on his son, and Jiban's soul reveals that it was Dockham, who promised him a higher position than Rotten and Goliath, upon which the deranged magician grabs Hannah and threatens to blow her head off if anyone approaches him. Everyone freezes in place, but Tsukuru calmly asks if he thinks a maid's life will shield him, as he continues to toy with the paper plane. He notes that he is the lowest scum for killing a noble son, and that sacrificing a maid would be a small price to pay. Ali intercedes, begging Dockham not to kill Hannah, and as the man continues with his threats, the maid bluntly tells them to not care about her, since she isn't as good of a person as Altelius believes. The magician violently tries to shut her up, but she resists, and confesses that Dokkum threatened her and ordered her to kill Kana and Tsukuru, confessing her several failed attempts and asking them to forget about her and just end the magician. Dokkum is enraged, but before he can react, Rotten cuts his arm and kicks him to the ground while Goliath secures Hannah. The magician begins to scream at the sight of blood, believing he will die, and orders Hannah to do something, warning her of what will happen should she oppose him. Dengaro calls him out, insulting him for plotting Dolce's assassination, but the magician insists on lying, stating that he killed Jaban by accident out of fear of being framed, insisting that Tsukuru schemed everything. He asks if they would accept the word of a maid and a stranger with bizarre powers as proof, insisting that there is no proof of his involvement and that they are all being fooled, and that nobody would trust the boy at a trial. The Count becomes enraged, as things seem to be heading nowhere, and noticing Tsukuru's calm demeanor, asks him why he is playing around in such a situation. The boy launches the paper plane, and Altelius notices that there is something written on the paper. Unfolding it, she sees that it is a letter addressed to Dokkum, and her father reads the text congratulating him for his contribution in dispatching Dolce, and promising to make him a baron as a reward. Furious, the Count realizes that the letter is from Arefusel. Dokkum asks how they got the letter, unwittingly admitting his guilt. Tsukuru then reveals that Count Arefusel was behind the plot, ordering Dokkum to dispatch the boy while the magician in turn let Jaban arrange the crime, so that he would be blamed if it would fail. Pulling out a second letter, he goes on to explain that the second part of the plan was to stage a robbery on Altelius's carriage and end her, leaving someone with Fusel blood next in line to take over the Abus family. As the pieces come together, Altelius realizes that there is only one person who meets those criteria: Cloud. As the second letter is revealed to be addressed to Alicia, everyone turns to see Rotten holding his head with his hands, in the midst of a mental breakdown as the facts sink in. Rotten stands in full military uniform staring sternly at his arranged bride. The girl shyly introduces herself, and he notes that her uncle is forcing her to marry him, offering her a good life if she marries him while also stating that she deserves better, and he will give her a good reason to refuse the marriage. Shyly, Alicia expresses her desire to be with him. Sometime later, they happily welcome their son Cloud into the world. In the present, Rotten wonders how long Alicia has been lying to him. In a flashback, Rotten recalls a day when Cloud approached him and told him that Alicia wanted him to marry Altelius and succeed the Abus family. As his father pointed out that Dolce is set to succeed his father, the boy stated his desire to become a knight like Rotten, his father, to protect the Abus family, the citizens, and his mother. Back in the present, Rotten goes through a mental breakdown as the truth sinks in, and he realizes that Cloud's remark wasn't a joke. Saying his wife's name, he dashes out of the room at full speed, while Altelius calls to him and rushes behind him, with Tsukuru remaining in place. At the training yard, Cloud is glad to see his father, until he notices his cold demeanor. Rotten addresses Alicia, shocking her as he asks if she was involved, judging her guilty, and stating that as a knight of the Abus family, he has no choice but to kill her right there. Cloud blocks his strike and is sent flying across the floor with a gash on his face, much to Rotten's shock. Alicia embraces her son, who, despite his father's warning, refuses to move away from her, stating that it is a knight's duty to protect the weak. Altelius begs the knight to stop, but another warrior warns her to stay away. Rotten holds his sword above his head, staring at his son until he breaks down and slumps to the ground, apologizing to Cloud, and holding the blade with both hands over his knees. As Dengaro and the rest approach, he apologizes to him for failing to end Alicia, and plans to atone it with his life, pressing his sword against his neck before his terrified son. Cloud approaches him screaming, and Dengaro orders a healer to be fetched. Kana looks on, and as Tsukuru nods approvingly, she dashes forth towards Rotten, despite someone noting that it is below her level. The girl uses extra heal, and a beam of light emanates from Rotten as the spell begins to work, blinding those present. Everyone is surprised at her skill, and Kana explains to Cloud that his father is alive, but unconscious, causing him to break down in tears. The Count then approaches Alicia and declares that her uncle Arefusel plotted Dolce's assassination, upon which the woman breaks down and falls to the ground. She apologizes, stating that she only learned of the plot after the assassination had been carried out, and that her uncle had told her that she had no other choice but to make her son the successor of the Abus family. Enraged, Dengaro curses and orders Goliath to start the preparations for war, determined to settle the score. The knight is stopped by Dolce's soul, who declares that war only brings sorrow to people, and he doesn't wish to see the people from Algeria suffer because of him. He goes on to declare that he didn't testify to start a war, instead coming back to answer Tsukuru's summon to save Kana from the false accusations brought against her, and states that his father also thought the same. The Count acknowledges this to be true, and Kana cries at the sight of Dolce, until the boy explains that Tsukuru told him what happened, and thanks her for becoming stronger, as well as for saving Rotten's life, telling her to smile since there is no reason for her to cry or apologize. Dolce then smiles, glad to have gotten the chance to say his farewells and asking all those present to keep on protecting the town and the people he loved. Restrained, Dokkum is escorted from the mansion by the knights, while lamenting the failure of the plot, and wishing that Tsukuru had never arrived. The boy looks at him from a window, then noting that he didn't go there because he wanted to. Kurokiri then suggests that with the issue settled, they move on to beat the representatives, or God, or whatever. To which he agrees, believing that he will part ways with Kana. At Seidel's shop, Kana is officially freed and her slave collar is removed. The merchant hands her new clothes, explaining that Tsukuru fixed and enhanced them after they got damaged, making them indestructible, and the girl hugs the garments. At the Abus mansion, Count Dengaro thanks the boy for his service, explaining that they captured Dokkum and all that worked with him, dismissing about 20% of the house's vassals, and Rotten left his position due to Alicia's involvement. Tsukuru notes that they couldn't wage war in such a state, which the Count confirms, while also stating that he will report the plot to the royal family. However, he regrets that the evidence Tsukuru brought won't be enough, noting that there are many rumors surrounding a refusal, and he might find more information if he looks into it. The boy correctly deduces that Dengaro wants to hire him again to investigate these rumors, and the Count offers him 30 million gold upon completion, which Kurokiri notes is a huge sum, while Tsukuru notes that they won't have to risk their lives going to war. He agrees to the job and immediately drops a pile of documents on the Count's desk, explaining to the surprised man that they are evidence of Arefusal's involvement in illegal trade, slavery, and drug smuggling. He tells the man that Base got them for him, happily stating that they completed the request and demanding his payment. As he stores the gold bag, Tsukuru asks about Kana, and the Count states that he has prepared everything for her to return at any time, and that Altelius has been longing for her return. Meanwhile, the princess greets Kana, who is wearing her new clothes, and enthusiastically welcomes her back, offering her refreshment and ushering her along to finish the procedure for returning to work. Merrily entering the Count's office with her in tow. Kana apologizes, however, and states her desire to follow Tsukuru. The boy states that the contract is nullified, but she asks to become his slave again, stating that he will be alone if she leaves. Noting the cold and lonely feeling in his eyes reminds her of herself during her captivity. Unwilling to leave him alone, she asks to be allowed to go with him. Tsukuru asks if she knows what his plans are, but she merely states that she knows it's something scary. But she still wishes to stay by his side even if they're going against the world or God, leaving him speechless. He then asks if Ali is alright with that, and the prince bursts out laughing, telling him not to humiliate Kano's resolve in offering her everything to him, while Dengaro laughs. Sighing, he agrees, stating that she will be sent back the moment she drags him down, and everyone rejoices until Dengaro points out a problem. There is a knock on the door and Goliath enters the room, bringing the enslaved Hana with him, while the Count explains that they had planned to give the girl to Tsukuru in exchange for Kana. The boy points out that she tried to end him, but Dengaro explains that she revealed that Dokkum took her sister hostage and forced her to commit her crimes. Regardless, since she did commit the crime, they decided to hand the girl over to Tsukuru as her punishment. Ali begs him to accept her, stating that Hana had no choice, and the boy asks for Kana's opinion. The girl ponders the issue and refuses, stating that she should work in a cruel place until she dies, but also noting that she might become helpless, as she was because of Dokkum's fault. Unwilling to let it happen, she offers to buy Hana if Tsukuru doesn't want her, stating that she will look out for her as someone else who worked under the Abus family. Tsukuru relents, allowing her to follow him and only move under his orders, which Hana swears to uphold with her life. At Seidel's shop, the merchant warns Tsukuru that inflicting violence and impossible orders upon slaves is a crime, asking him to contact him frequently and threatening him were something to happen to Kana. He agrees, and as the merchant offers him to purchase whatever he might need for his journey, the boy reveals that there is still something he needs to do, much to everyone's surprise. Tsukuru checks Hana's stats, until Dengaro asks him a favor regarding his soldiers, explaining that their morale is low, and with Rotten stepping down, only Goliath has been left in charge, leaving the house vulnerable to attacks. He asks the boy to teach the soldiers his skills and then bring Rotten back. Rotten remains isolated and broken in his room, not answering his son's calls. Cloud hears someone knocking on the main door and opens it to see Tsukuru, Kana, and Hana. The cook heads to Rotten's room and kicks down the door, telling him that the Count wants him to train the knights, grabbing him by the collar and yelling that they are too weak and that he should help train them. The former knight argues that he has already stepped down, but Tsukuru is having none of it. Cloud worries about the situation, but Kana reassures him, asking the child to have trust in Tsukuru. The knights then show up and beg their former commander to return, and Goliath admits that he can't handle it alone and they need his help, and that both Dengaro and Altelius are waiting for him. Kana suggests that Tsukuru should say something, but the boy angrily asks why he should deal with this, recalling how he was thrown into the forest while Rotten is fidgeting while living a good life, and that his friend Ichinose was the only one who tried to help him. He then states that Rotten didn't have to return, but he will teach him his skills so he can teach others, telling him that they are going to Bulf Forest that instant to start the training. Meanwhile, in Sunset, capital of the kingdom of Luke Sandale, the heroes are being trained incessantly to defeat the Demon Lords. Ichinose heals the wounded and wonders why they must fight the Demon Lords, before collapsing from exhaustion, noting that all she can do is heal. She thinks about Tsukuru, being mocked for it by another boy, who then reassures her and asks her to take care of herself. Smiling, the girl asks Tsukuru to be safe. At Bulf Forest, the boy drops the knights off a cliff to face the forest's monsters, having given them recovery food and expecting them to be fine. Hannah asks to join the training, but he instead tells her that they will leave to get her sister back. As they reach Fusel Castle, the former maid asks if it is fine to do something like that for her, to which Tsukuru replies that she is important enough for her to attempt to end him, so if she is a hostage, they will have to get her back. The girl thanks him, and they both activate their stealth skills, while the boy hands Kana the hider's coat to mask her own presence. Heading inside, they stumble across a huge statue of Arafusel, appalled by his poor taste. Hannah wonders where her sister Sonia might be, and Base materializes to inform them that she's in an underground cell, leading the way there. Once in the dungeon, Tsukuru pries the bars open with his bare hands using monster strength, and Hannah tries to rouse her sister. And while Kana offers to heal her, the boy points out that they will be detected if she uses magic there, and they should get out first. He freezes in place as he glimpses at the girl for the first time, uttering the name Ayumu. Tsukuru recalls his miserable life and the loss he suffered, noting how he believed there was nothing left for him in the previous world. While he thinks this, the world's goddess watches the scene through a mirror, complimenting him for rescuing the girl, and noting that her world has a nice air to do it again. She wonders how long it will take to expel Susanoo Mikoto's life, regretting it but accepting it as the price for peace. Looking at a sake cup, she drains the life of a group of people dancing before her, and instructs Ohimino Mikoto to order everyone to repair the space-time wall, fearing that the world will meet its end at this rate. She then explains that the Spirited Away phenomenon has been taking place in Japan since ancient times, where a human from Earth sometimes gets summoned in another world. Though 1 or 2 people summoned every few years is fine, the number has risen to 100 people the past 2 summonings, and every time this takes place, the walls separating the worlds are eroded, bringing the world closer to collapse. Even though the destruction of Earth would also affect that world, no measures have been taken, which causes the goddess to curse the god of Earth as rotten. In a flashback, she recalls that, fearing that if these large-scale summonings continued, the space-time wall would break, she stated that if the Earth god didn't deploy any countermeasure, she should lend a hand. Noting that 108 people had been summoned, she regretted being limited to watch this time, while being unable to influence it. Seeing Tsukuru had even less influence than her and noting his troubled life, she decided to give him a power related to his cooking skill, and max out his luck so he could survive tough situations. She also instructed that he be given the right to be released as her blessing, making his power go up significantly even if it is sealed. Looking at Tsukuru in the present, the goddess comments on how long she has been waiting, beckoning him to come and punish the rotten gods, promising not to spare any effort helping him punish those who put her world at risk, by performing the multiple summonings. Pausing to wonder what he is doing, as she sees Tsukuru's group heading to Sadles. At Sadles, Hannah tends to her sister, while Kana and Tsukuru sleep. The boy dreams of his previous life, recalling when he returned home to find everyone gone shopping to celebrate the entrance exam. He was busy fixing a stew his mother had left on the stove, when a call came telling him that there had been an accident, and his adopted family's car had been hit by a truck head-on. At their funeral, someone noted how they took him in, being the son of a friend who had passed, treating him as another son of their own and wondering what would happen to him then. Back in the present, Tsukuru wakes up crying while Kana looks on with concern. She tells him that Sonia is already awake, and attempts to ask him about his condition, but he tells her to not worry about it before heading off. Hannah greets him, thanking him for saving her little sister, and the boy states that there is no need, while using his cooking skills to create some easy-to-digest food for her. Both Sanya and Hana thank him, and the girl begins to eat, finding the food delicious. As she eats, he notes how similar the girl is to his foster sister Ayumu, and despite having seen her body after the accident, he wonders if it might be her, due to the existence of summonings. Sanya notices him staring at her, and he asks her if she knows about Japan, which she denies. He then starts bombarding her with several questions regarding her origin, until Hana points out that she is her sister and they grew up together until they were separated as indentured servants. When asked about his interrogation, he brushes it off and apologizes, telling the girl to eat before the food gets cold, before departing with Kana going after him. At the stairs, Kana points out his strange behavior since meeting Sanya and asks for the reason. And after a pause, he agrees, and tells her that he was shocked since he believed it was someone he knew, though it appears he was mistaken, which Kana hesitantly accepts. Tsukuru then states that they must go to Bulf Forest, to which the girl agrees, before asking him to tell her when the time is right. Hesitantly, Tsukuru agrees. At Bulf Forest, the knights led by Rotten and Goliath stand together and fight the incoming monsters, while Tsukuru and Kana look on. The boy intercedes, severely wounding a powerful bird-like monster, and the troops cheer him on, knowing that they will level up considerably after finishing the creature off. Having succeeded, Goliath proposes that they hold a party once they return, but Rotten looks disheartened. Back at the Abus mansion, everyone crosses the estate gate, except for Rotten. He informs the knights that his duty ends there, since they have all survived the ordeal and Dengaro's request has been fulfilled, but he cannot enter the gates of the Abus family after Alicia's wrongdoings. He insists that the soldiers don't need him anymore, but Tsukuru counters him, noting that he has also become much stronger. Dengaro then appears with his daughter, noting that it is dangerous to leave a high-level warrior like Rotten roaming free. He states that he can't return him to the household troops against his will, so he has established a new command position, leading the town's guards, a position that he wants him to fill. He explains that there is a bear roaming the town at times, unaware that it is actually Tsukuru, and tells him that if he managed to subdue it, it would help a lot. Rotten attempts to refuse, but the Count insists, saying that he has known him since he was young, and it would be a shame losing him and his promising son. Goliath urges him to accept, and thinking of his son, he does, promising to be loyal to the Abus family until his final breath. Cloud hears the good news from his grandmother. Elsewhere, Sanya eats large amounts of Tsukuru's food to level up and get more skills. The boy notes her energy, and Hana explains that as a wolf, beastmen have a strong resistance against hunger, and can endure on little food or water, just glad that she wasn't wounded. The girl expresses her anger at being caught by a refusal while sleeping, but Tsukuru explains that he stole everything in his mansion, and Dengaro sent a letter to the king accusing him of his crimes. Sanya then states that she's glad to have endured Fusel, if it means that she can now eat Tsukuru's food every day. The boy is surprised that she wants to follow him, and when Kana notes that it would be safer for her to remain there, the girl cries out at them, considering it unfair that her sister gets to go while she is left behind. She pleads to Tsukuru, who recalls Ayumu pleading with the exact same expression, and so he yields, causing the girl to burst with joy while Kana wonders if he is a lolicon. He then gets the girl new clothes, and checks her and her sister's stats. Before they depart, Dengaro and Altelius appear to bid their farewell, asking them to visit them any time. Ali asks Tsukuru to stay safe, noting that having the Abus family short sword, he is already part of their family, and proceeds to hug Kana and Hana, telling them to return whenever they would like, since they are cherished as sisters. Bidding their farewells to Sadal and Rotten, they head off. Tsukuru announces that they will first be heading towards Bulf Forest to train Hana and Sanya, while regretting getting away from a beastmen town, noting how fluffy their ears were. Sanya then points out her ears, and a jealous Kana pulls on hers. Suddenly though, Tsukuru senses a creature nearby, which Hana identifies as a great bird flying overhead, while Kana wonders what it is doing outside of the forest and so close to a human settlement. In horror, the girl realizes that it is headed to the city of Algeria. Realizing the great birds are headed to the city, Kana uses her wind magic to propel herself to the sky, and launch several fire javelins at one of them, torching it and being caught by Tsukuru as she falls. They land next to a cheering Sanya and warn her of incoming monsters, and before the creatures reach him, they are defeated by Base. He informs Tsukuru that many monsters have formed a group and are headed that way, which causes Kana to realize that Goliath and the others will be overrun if the horde reaches the city. Unwilling to let them die, Tsukuru instructs the girl to get ready to intercept the monsters before they reach Algeria. They prepare for combat, and Kana orders Hana and Sanya to get behind her, before unleashing a flamestorm at the creatures, burning a path of destruction. While Tsukuru uses Kurokiri, Hana and Sanya marvel at their power, wondering if they will ever become like them if they train hard enough. Tsukuru calls their names and urges them to fight, instructing Hana to kill a level 230 silver elephant that he has softened up and restrained. Using her strength skills and brass knuckles, she delivers the killing blow to the monster, but her arm is completely shattered by the force of the blow. She falls into shock, clutching her mangled arm and bleeding out as she levels up. And as the others rush to her aid, Kurokiri notes that her body couldn't endure such a massive level up. Realizing what happens when one goes too far, Tsukuru uses ultimate cooking to produce a dish and orders Hana to eat it, telling her that she will die if she doesn't. Sanya quickly grabs a piece and feeds it to her agonizing sister, urging her to swallow it, and watching in astonishment as her arm is fully regrown. The cook tells her to eat the rest, brushing off her apology by stating that the mistake was his, causing Hana to jealously note how kind he is being towards the maid. Recalling that he went full Sparta during her own training and made her heal herself, he points out that Hana doesn't have any healing skills, and he did help when Kana was in trouble. And before she can argue further, he hands out stamina-enhancing onigiri to everyone. He then orders Sanya to target a level 220 Sylpharia, telling her to not be reckless. The girl gladly enters combat, and dispatches the monster with a throwing axe, praising her own strength as she levels up, while Hana advises her to take things more seriously, lest she get hurt. They sync up during battle, causing Kana to wonder if that is due to them being sisters of Wolfkin. Tsukuru notes to himself that despite being in sync, Sanya tends to look away when fighting. He is also alarmed at the number of monsters, finding it abnormal that they maintain their momentum even though they disrupted their movement, and ordering base to investigate the matter, hoping nothing happens. Sanya is overpowered by a monster, causing Tsukuru to experience a flashback of his dead half-sister, and he dashed between the girl and the creature, protecting her, until Hana dispatches the beasts. Kana approaches and notices the boy's wound, and when Sanya apologizes, the boy brushes it off, patting her head and stating that he can heal it quickly and is just glad she is okay, urging her to keep up her spirit and fight the remaining monsters. After they succeed in defeating the entire group, Tsukuru cooks several dishes, including a curry that marvels both Sanya and Kana, and a gigantic dish exclusively for the latter. Tsukuru smiles as everyone feasts. That night, Tsukuru conceals the camp in which they are sleeping in, and Kurokiri asks him what's wrong. The blade notes that the boy has clearly been feeling unsettled since meeting Sanya, and that it is unlike him to get hurt protecting someone. The boy tries to dismiss this, but Kurokiri reminds him that he is connected to his mind and he can sense his torment, asking if he has fallen in love with the girl and laughing at him. He angrily denies this, rattling the sword, who calms him down, stating that it was just a joke to break the ice, and advising him to stop being agitated else he wakes the girls up. Suddenly, everyone feels a strong presence, and Tsukuru exits the tent in alarm, only to find a beautiful elf holding a battered Base captive, while asking them if they were the ones who damaged the forest. Base tells his master to run before disintegrating, though Kurokiri notes that the creature is still alive but has retreated into the shadow. Turning to face them, the elf declares Bull Forest to be her race's sanctuary, telling Tsukuru to atone for their sins for killing monsters and damaging the forest with his life, before unleashing a powerful attack. The boy manages to block it with Kurokiri, and asks the elf why she is suddenly attacking him. Surprised that he blocked the strike, she wonders if someone with such a defensive power is actually a human. Tsukuru yells at her to not ignore him, aware that his companions wouldn't survive against her and determined to get her away from them. She states that his sins are heavy, but Tsukuru counters that the monster suddenly attacked them, and he was just defending himself, while striking at her. She blocks the attack, calling him foolish, before pushing him back and unleashing an attack of her own, commenting that he could have had a painless death. Tsukuru notes that aside from flying, the elf is protected by wind magic, which makes her untouchable. Kurokiri urges him to use detail appraisal, and the boy complies and finds out that she is Antia, a level 415 ancient elf with impressive powers. The blade notes that she is the original elf and the progenitor of the elf race, thus explaining how she managed to defeat Base. As she asks him if he appraised her, the blade comments that he is out of luck, which the boy brushes aside. Noting she is 100 levels higher than him and has a second life skill that he doesn't understand, he wonders how to attack her, until the elf grows impatient and decides to end the fight, sending several tornadoes in his direction. While the boy defends himself, Kana urges Sanya to not intervene, since they would just be a burden, urging her to wait and believe in the boy. Meanwhile, Kurokiri urges Tsukuru to stop focusing on defense and look closely at Antia, but he barely has time to reply before being hit by an attack and getting smashed against the ground. As the blade urges him to get up, the cook remarks that he always ends up like that ever since he came to that world, noting that no one even tried to ask him about his circumstances and just did as they pleased. Furious, he screams with determination, deciding not to die until he has crushed every single one of his tormentors, attacking the elf with his wood magic and dark magic. Antia dodges the wood tentacles, noting his resistance, sensing Tsukuru attempting to attack her from behind and severing his arm while stating that it is futile. She is shocked, however, when she finds herself surrounded by multiple Tsukurus. Realizing that he is trying to confuse her with illusions, she prepares to use her wind magic to defeat all of them simultaneously, when she is suddenly stabbed through the chest by Tsukuru from behind. As she coughs up blood, the boy eats some food and agrees that she would have won had she defeated them all. He announces that it is over, as Antia falls to the ground, and he approaches her, activating Wild Instinct, lowering Kurokiri. She asks if he isn't going to finish her off, but the boy replies that she is fatally wounded and only alive due to her second life skill. She confirms this, not having expected to lose to a human, and reveals that if he strikes her down now, she will be gone for good, stating that dying after losing is the principle of nature. Tsukuru pauses and notes that she has her own circumstances as well, stating that he wouldn't have hurt her had she talked like this when they met. Antia then begins to laugh, much to Kurokiri's confusion. Standing up, she introduces herself and surrenders to Tsukuru for him to do as he pleases. He brings her to camp, where she meets the 3 other girls. She then asks if they are going to put her on a rampage like the monsters and hunt her down, much to everyone's confusion. Just as Tsukuru is about to ask her about that, Base materializes again, and explains that he has investigated Bull Forest per his instructions. Tsukuru asks Base if he found the cause for the rampaging monsters, and as a surprised Antia asks if it wasn't their doing, he points out that they wouldn't have had to fight them if it was so. Base reports that he found traces of monsters being driven out and a faint amount of demon's aura, and the elf confirms that some demons have such a skill. Base believes that the demon was most likely the cause of the rampage, and tensely blames Antia for blocking his return, and they exchange tense stares while Tsukuru tries to calm things down, suggesting they discuss further now that they know they are not enemies. The elf invites them to her village, where adult elves welcome her with reverential bows, and cute child elves merrily greet her, being reassured that the monsters won't attack them. Antia leads them on, noting how long it has been since humans or beast folk had visited the village due to their neutrality and unwillingness to get involved with other tribes. She points out, however, that they will act if there are demons involved, and the human and beast folk tribes would act as well. Tsukuru believes that she is exaggerating given that it is only one demon causing trouble, but she explains that a demon attacking a human or beast folk city isn't a simple matter and there is a long story behind it. As she recounts, thousands of years ago following the Gods' War, an alliance of elves, humans, dwarves, and beast folk were engaged in a war against the giants and demons. After hundreds of years, the alliance prevailed, but only at the cost of horrendous casualties, and the destruction of one of the 3 great continents. Giants and demons were driven out to the ravaged eastern great continent, and the Quadruple Alliance had been protecting their land ever since. Despite the existing non-interference pact between the members of the alliance, the human tribe has been acting suspiciously, developing weapons and increasing their population and magic power, threatening the peace of the great continent and creating an opportunity for the other tribes to expand their own claims. Antia then declares that if the demons are beginning their assault, then the alliance must band together to repel the invaders, and not allow history to repeat itself. The elf then turns to see her audience, realizing that they have all fallen asleep. Later, Tsukuru sits by a waterfall and thinks about what Antia said, unwilling to get involved. Kana approaches him, noting how they ended up in the elf village, and were told such big news and stating that she won't return to Algeria. She asks the boy if he will cooperate with the elf, and upon his refusal, she replies that she figured out as much, since he isn't from that world. Kana then proceeds to reveal that she knew he was the hero that was summoned and then discarded, apologizing for hiding it from him. Tsukuru then points out that he isn't a hero, having been rejected and abandoned at the Bull Forest after the auction, which Kana finds extremely cruel. The boy then recalls the hell he went through, stating that he has no intention of saving the world and just wants to get revenge against the ones who put him through everything he's been through. Kana then yells that he saved her, Hannah, Sanya, and the people of Algeria City, which makes him a hero in her eyes, and holding his hand, says she won't forgive those who put him through the suffering. The moment is interrupted by Sanya's sudden appearance, and Hannah and Antia can be seen in the background, having overheard everything. The maid won't forgive Tsukuru's tormentors either, and Antia finds their adoration amusing, and offers to join as well, teasing that she is single. Getting more serious, she states that based on what he said of the hero summoning, they might be headed to the same destination, asking to come along, and pointing out that her ability and knowledge will be useful, to which the boy begrudgingly agrees. Sanya then teases Tsukuru about his growing harem, and while the group messes around, Antia coldly notes that there shouldn't be any enemies to be eliminated at present to justify a summoning. Elsewhere, a huge figure raises a warhammer. The group enjoys life in the elf village when a servant bows and announces that the meal is ready. They enthusiastically head to the table, only to find out that the meal is a gigantic, grilled bug. The elf girls tell Antia to eat a lot and get energy before she goes with the others. She explains that she's just going to see what the humans are up to, noting that human lifespan is short and that she will return in 100 years, and asking them to take care of everyone in her absence. Kurokiri and Tsukuru inwardly note this, and Kana asks what they should do regarding the bug, since neither her nor beast folk eat insects. Recalling that he ate a lot of insects while surviving in the forest, he concludes that it can't be helped, and thanks the elves for the meal, offering to cook for them as well in gratitude. Despite their reluctance, he insists, and pulls a gigantic monster carcass from his inventory, amazing the elves present. He then decides to impress them, chopping the creature up with Kurokiri with ease, before using ultimate cooking to produce several delicious dishes from the meat, which everyone eagerly devours while praising the cook. Meanwhile, Tsukuru eats the giant bug and calls the food exciting, inwardly noting that it was overcooked. Hana then points out that her training has finished and knows his objective, wondering what his next destination will be. The girls piece together that the country who summoned him is the human Raid Crude Empire, to the south of their location, and they begin to discuss how to get there while Tsukuru nervously looks on. They then realize that he doesn't know the geography of the world, and are surprised that he managed to escape Bull Forest, while Kurokiri notes that he was headed in the wrong direction until he pointed towards the exit. Calling him hopeless, Antia produces a map of the continent, and explains how it is divided between elves in the north, beast folk in the center, and humans mostly in the south. Needing to go to the Raid Crude Empire, Hana suggests that they travel south, from the beast folk Templeton Kingdom, where Algeria City is located, and enter the Engels Union, then passing through Luke Sandale Kingdom before entering the Empire. While Tsukuru recalls that Ichinose was bought by Luke Sandale, the maid continues to explain that passing through the Templeton Kingdom would be easy, since humans and beast folk coexist there, and Kana adds that she has entered the Engels Union before, so they decide to take that route. The planning is disrupted when Antia and Tsukuru feel a presence, and an elf warns that something resembling a meteorite is falling from the sky. Kana and Antia then step forward and decide to smash it with magic, combining their fire and wind spells. They create a gigantic fireball and launch it straight at the object, hitting it with full force but failing to smash it. It crashes into the forest, and once the dust settles, everyone beholds the mountain-sized object. Kana notes that it could have crushed the village, and Sanya notes that she's glad that it didn't fall there. But Antia notes that there is nothing to be glad about. She then states that she won't forgive him for damaging the forest, addressing the gigantic being rising from the crash site as ancient giant Crafton. The giant laughs loudly, greeting Antia and noting her small size. Tsukuru appraises Crafton, finding out he is a level 495 power-type ancient giant, specializing in physical attacks and destruction, whose level surpasses Antia's and could cause casualties in the village if they were to fight there. The giant and the elf taunt each other, and the latter accuses the former of sending one of his subordinates to cause the monster rampage, though he grins and denies it. Antia then yells, demanding to know why he came to the continent, and he replies that he is visiting after having sensed her presence disappear for a moment, concluding that she lost her second life, and declaring that to be the last time they meet each other. He raises his hammer, but before he can land the blow, Tsukuru slices his fingers, and lands several blows along the giant's arm, causing the weapon to drop to the ground. Crafton then asks the boy standing on his shoulder who he is, and he introduces himself as the human who took away Antia's second life, asking the elf if he can deal with him, since he detests powerful beings who trample on the weak with no explanation. The giant doesn't believe Tsukuru's claim, and he taunts him, noting he can't measure his strength, and suggesting he fears him, offering to let him go if he cries and apologizes for damaging the forest. Enraged, Crafton swings at the boy and fetches his hammer, swinging wildly while Tsukuru dodges every strike, and moves further away from the village. Antia then orders those who can't fight to get inside, and those who can to protect the village, while Kana worries about her master and hopes that he is safe. Elsewhere, Kurokiri notes that they are sufficiently far away, and the giant demands that Tsukuru stop dodging and fight him fair and square, The boy continues to dodge, and the blade notes the giant's lack of intellect, before telling Tsukuru to swing him to his heart's content. His strike has no effect, and the giant then swings at the boy as he continues to dodge. While noting how different they are, Tsukuru continues to land several blows on Crafton's body, causing the giant to also notice how they have no effect. Tsukuru acknowledges this and uses his ultimate move number 1, unleashing a powerful guillotine hellfire, but the giant counters with charge attack. The effect of the clash can be felt by the nearby group, and the giant praises the boy for being the first to survive his attack. Changing to a more demonic form, he reintroduces himself to the exhausted boy as the founder of the Giant Tribe, and the ruler of giants and demons, demanding to know his opponent's name. Tsukuru obliges him, and Crafton questions him about his power, stating that he doesn't believe Themis had died, and wondering if humanity has 2 ancient types. The boy denies knowing anything about the ancient type, stating he's just an ordinary person. But the giant doesn't believe him, noting he will die, and praising Tsukuru for making him get serious. He moves his arm forward, generating a shockwave that sends the boy flying and causing severe damage. Eating some food, he recovers and stands up, much to the giant's amazement. The creature notes that he is only prolonging his fate, but Tsukuru replies that he is just warming up, while raising Kurokiri. Crafton laughs at this, praising his defiance, and noting his tough act is at an end as he prepares to attack once more. Tsukuru blocks Crafton's punch with Kurokiri, and while the giant taunts him, the boy notes how his strength and speed have increased, and he can barely keep defending. Kurokiri notes that it will be a tough fight for him given the giant's higher level, noting that his only advantage is that he's a mythical class divine sword. He promises to find an opportunity for Tsukuru, commanding him to believe in him, obey his instructions, deflect the attacks, and confuse Crafton with camouflage and dark magic. Tsukuru continues to precisely obey the sword's directions, starting to move even before thinking, and causing the giant to notice as he pushes himself to his upper limit. Seeing an opening, Kurokiri orders the boy to strike at Crafton's face, and despite the giant's taunts, Tsukuru yells at the giant not to underestimate him, since he is the Black Mist. Adopting a new posture, he unleashes the second ultimate move, the Meteor-Cutting Fang. Crafton punches to disrupt the attack with his right hand and smashes Tsukuru with his left, as Kurokiri tells him to defend himself. Both the giant and the boy are sent back by the clash, with the sword bouncing next to Tsukuru and urging the wounded and unconscious boy to heal himself. Crafton gets up, having lost an arm during the attack, and prepares to crush the boy, while noting that it was a good fight. Kana stands before her master, determined to defend him despite the hopeless situation. And as Tsukuru fears for his safety, the goddess appears, asking him if he wishes to become stronger. Tsukuru wonders who that might be, but she insists that he answer quickly else he and Kana die. He replies that he can't die there without having done anything, since there are still people he wants to smack and he desires to be stronger to do so. The goddess acknowledges this and releases her divine protection, stating that he will find out soon enough who she is. A status window informs him of the release of the Divine Seal and of the new Feast of the Gods skill he has acquired. He then starts glowing, much to Kana and Crafton's surprise. The status window explains his new cooking skill, allowing him to prepare extremely powerful dishes, and he thanks the goddess for granting him the broken skill, cooking an Emperor Dragon meat dish with severe side effects, while stating that anything is fine as long as it gives him the power to defeat Crafton. Tsukuru devours the foul-tasting dish, which temporarily grants him a divine power and turns his hair silver. He then charges toward the shocked giant, who insists that the boy can't defeat an ancient type like himself just by leveling up. Tsukuru then severs the giant's arm with a single cut, cutting him in several places with such a speed that Crafton can't even see him. He wonders at this power and asks if Tsukuru is just a human, as the boy slashes his back. He turns in rage, determined not to lose to a human, and states that it's impossible, as Tsukuru unleashes a guillotine hellfire attack, destroying Crafton's upper half, and emerging emotionless and bloody at the feet of the fallen ancient-type giant. Covered in blood, Kana looks at Tsukuru standing at the feet of the fallen giant, and nervously approaches him, barely uttering any words. Tsukuru notices her, but before he can chastise her for her attempted sacrifice, Sanya appears and embraces him from behind, praising his skills and noting how he is covered in blood. And Tia also congratulates him, noting that if he had been defeated there, she would have lost her second life for nothing, while Kana stands in the back, inwardly regretting not being able to do anything yet. However, the elf points out that it isn't over, noting that Crafton also has second life, while the giant rises behind them. Kurokiri urges Tsukuru to cut the giant down before the divine power dissipates, and the boy lunges forward to fulfill the task. But before he can succeed, Crafton summons his hammer Mjolnir and uses a blow-away spell, causing a seal to appear in the sky, shining a blinding light reminiscent of the one the boy saw when being summoned. As the light fades, Tsukuru and the group find themselves in a desert. Sanya freaks out, wondering if the giant wiped everything out or if they are dead, while her sister tells her to calm down. Antia reassures them that they are still alive, explaining that they were transported to another place by the power of the hammer. Not being able to sense Crafton or the elves' presence, she believes that they are in another world, prompting Kana to frantically ask if they are in Japan. Tsukuru denies this, starting to describe Earth before collapsing to the ground, unable to move or feel his body, as the group rushes towards him. In Sunset, the capital of the kingdom of Luxandale, a beastfolk in tattered clothes approaches Ichinose, holding a foaming child in his arms, and explaining that it is his daughter who has been poisoned by a monster, begging the girl to heal her and give her an antidote. Before the girl can do this, a soldier stops her, and tells her that the man is a beastfolk with low social standing, who will probably attack and rob her or else mooch off of her asking for food and money. He goes on to explain that beastfolk will do anything for money, even acting sick or wounding themselves, insinuating that the man kidnapped and wounded the child himself. Ichinose protests that the child is weak regardless, but the soldier insists that the child would die being used later, regardless of what she did, urging her not to bother with them and return to her line. She breaks down, unable to tell what the truth is, and while her friend comforts her, she laments that lives aren't considered important in that world, and people die irrationally easily, and they are willing to summon children from another world to use them as weapons of war as a result. Seeing two men discuss about slavery, she notes how quickly they discard people that don't benefit them. Her friend Miki expresses his disgust toward the country and their classmates who are adapting to them, wondering how they ended up being sent to war as heroes in a world where slavery and discrimination is normal. Ichinose starts crying, stating that she wouldn't have allowed Tsukuru to go by himself if she had known the world was like that, and fearing he might have become a slave himself, or a beggar, or worse. Miki snaps her out of it, telling her to hang in there and get stronger to defeat the Demon Lord quickly to return to their world, stating that they will probably meet Tsukuru along the way, and holding her hand. She thanks him, stating that she will believe in him and Tsukuru. Kana and Sanya cry out at the unconscious Tsukuru while everyone tries to find out what's wrong with him. The boy wonders what is happening since he can see, hear, and think, but he can't feel or move any part of his body. Kurokiri then notes that he seems to have lost his sense of touch as a penalty for consuming the Feast of the Gods. It laughs at the situation, remarking that they can converse telepathically, before presenting itself as Tsukuru's interpreter to the surprised group. He then proceeds to tell Sanya how the boy got the pervert title, teasing the boy telepathically when he demands he stop telling the girl weird and embarrassing things. Tsukuru swears retribution. Antia and Hana return from scouting, revealing that the land is unknown to them, and there are many demons in the area, with the maid having returned covered in demon blood. Tsukuru notes what Crafton said about ruling both giants and demons, which the sword relays to the team. The elf confirms that he has ruled both tribes since the Gods' War, as the demon ancient type never appeared. But she remarks that said creatures can't be dead, since every time an ancient type dies, another one would be born. Tsukuru then deduces that controlling the force of other tribes requires cooperating with their ancient type, making them submit or imprisoning them somewhere so they wouldn't interfere. The boy speculates that they are in a prison holding the demon's ancient type, unable to confirm it due to his inability to summon base. Running out of ideas, he suggests that they make camp there and wait for him to recover, and Kana begins to prepare the tent, but not before casting clean on Hana. The maid asks her what's on her mind, and though Kana nervously tries to brush it off, Hana notes that it is normal to feel anxious in the situation, before heading off to prepare a meal, causing the girl to thank her. Later that night, Kana tries to place a wet towel on Tsukuru's head, but Base tells her that he isn't a sick person, so there isn't a need for it, scaring the girl and causing her to smack the boy with the towel. She apologizes, lamenting that if she had the strength to drive off Crafton, he wouldn't have ended up like this, causing the shocked boy to inwardly note that he wasn't expecting her to do much from the beginning, though he instructs Kurokiri not to tell her that, realizing that her trauma over Dolce's murder hasn't healed yet. After a while, Tsukuru finally regains his sense of touch and skills, summoning Base and sending him along with Kana, Hana, and Sanya off to investigate, while noting that it took far more magic power than usual. Checking his stats, he realizes he has actually leveled up from fighting Antia and Crafton, not finding any reason for the high magic cost in his skills, and deducing it must be due to the place, while also wondering who the goddess might be. A demon then approaches Tsukuru, but Antia tears it to shreds with her wind magic, while also revealing that other demons attacked while they were sleeping, stating that they were scouts. She reveals that she buried them, causing Tsukuru to note her cruelty towards her enemy, while also realizing that it will allow Base to summon even more familiars. The creature returns, reporting that he has seen the edge of the world and destroyed demons along the way, while his companions didn't get to do anything. Base confirms that they are not in their world, and Tsukuru deduces that they must now be in a third world, hoping to find enemies above level 300 to use them as an ingredient for the Feast of the Gods, so that they can return. Base then reports that he has found the location of the demon's ancient type. Meanwhile, the ancient type is informed of the disappearing demons, recalling that he's been trapped in that world for centuries, now living in suffering, ordering his underling Gazan to eliminate these scoundrels at once. The group led by Base arrives at the ancient type's castle and are confronted by Gazan, a level 245 vampire who presents himself as the Great Demon and Noble Vampire Count, promising to eliminate those who disturb the land. His speech is cut short by Hannah blowing off his head with her brass knuckles, which causes the other demons to emerge and attack. As the group fights them, Antia thinks about Mjolnir, Krafton's hammer, not believing that the giant crafted the weapon by himself, and suspecting someone gave it to him instead. She notes that elves cannot create such a weapon, nor can beastfolk or dwarves due to their low magical power. And while death spirits can, they aren't on good terms with the other tribes, being particularly hostile against giants. She also notes that it is possible that the weapon was stolen from the demon tribe, and that the human tribe is capable of crafting it. Tsukuru plans to ask the demon ancient type about this, but Antia warns him to not expect too much, since demons aren't that intelligent, causing the boy to note that they will do as an ingredient instead, planning to get a level 300 or higher ingredient for the Feast of the Gods. The demon ancient type growls as he senses thousands of his soldiers disappearing, sensing Antia's presence and finding it unforgivable. The group then blasts their way inside the throne room, and the ancient type S bodyguards flee as Antia chuckles. They behold the small level 440 ancient type Katablapas, who chuckles, noting that they were also blown away by Krafton's strange hammer, stating that they won't be able to get out of there and considering them foolish for fighting the demons. Tsukuru realizes that the creature doesn't know anything about Mjolnir, and Antia accuses the demons of attacking first, causing the ancient type to lash out at her condescending attitude. He warns them not to underestimate him, and as Sanya attempts to strike at him, he uses Curse Eyes 3 to hypnotize the girl, and causes her to fall petrified to the ground. As Hannah approaches her sister, Antia warns them to not look into his eyes, but the creature starts sprouting and sending eyes everywhere in the room, making it impossible for the party to avert their gaze. The elf then tells everyone to close their eyes, but Katablapas states that it is futile, as those affected by his curse are his puppets, while commanding Sanya to attack her sister. Tsukuru grabs the girl, while simultaneously slicing the ancient type in half, sensing him through presence detection. And though the creature insists it isn't over yet since he still has his second life, the boy stabs him, noting that he is the weakest ancient type he has ever encountered. As Sanya comes around, Tsukuru laments not being able to get any information, while also cutting a slice of Katablapas to use for the Feast of the Gods. Antia is disgusted and asks if he will eat it, but the cook inwardly admits that he doesn't. Kanna then steps in, asking to be allowed to eat the Feast of the Gods. Everyone looks at Kanna as she requests to eat the feast. In a flashback of the previous night, Kanna recalls Dolce while watching over the immobile Tsukuru as Hannah enters the tent, and calmly asks her to take a walk. She fears she will be scolded, but the maid extends a jar of sweets, asking for her to keep it a secret from Sanya. She recalls those were the same sweets that Altelius requested from Hannah. The maid then reveals that Ali told her that the best way to cheer Kanna was giving her tea and sweets, and the girl apologizes for bothering her, considering herself hopeless and feeling that she's getting nowhere, despite believing that she was getting stronger. She notes how amazing Hannah is, listing her multiple skills, but the maid cuts her short, noting that, unlike Kanna, she has sinned. The girl argues that she did those things while being blackmailed when Sanya was being held hostage, and the maid admits that Dengaro, Altelius, Tsukuru, and the others all said that and forgave her, so she promised to use everything in her power to devote herself to the boy and repay their kindness. She admits her skills are incomparable to Tsukuru's, but she can still save some of his time and also cheer Kanna up making sweets. Hannah also notes that it is the same for Kanna, since she is only alive because the girl persuaded Tsukuru, and he saved her, and asks her to not forget that people were saved because of her just being the way she is. She then apologizes for speaking out of line as a maid, but Kanna thanks her wholeheartedly, admitting that she is right, and noting that she just has to do the best at what she can. Back at the present, she repeats her request to eat the Feast of Gods, causing Antia to suggest that she take better care of herself, and Sukuru to point out that there is a limit to her gluttony, shocking the girl due to the misunderstanding. She points out that he will use the power of the Feast of the Gods to escape from that world, noting that space-time magic is every magician's longing, and stating her desire as a magician to experience using it. Kana is aware that she can only use it for 5 minutes before she loses one of her senses for a day, but she insists, noting that as long as she has experienced the feeling, she can take her time analyzing it and eventually make the power her own. She hopes that this will allow her to return Sukuru to his original world once he finishes his revenge. The boy thinks on these words, realizing that he doesn't have any lingering affection in that world, and allows her to eat the feast, handing her a dish of golden-colored meat. He instructs her to wish for it while eating it, and she gulps it down, commenting on its bad taste, while wishing for space-time magic, so that she can return them to the world from whence they came. A halo of light then surrounds the group, adopting the shape of foxes, with Hana noting how warm the light feels and Sanya finding it pretty. Closing her eyes, Kana wishes to return to their world. Elsewhere in a void, someone asks the human ancient type Timus if the hero has awakened. He apologizes, stating that there's no sign of that yet. So the voice notes that the summoning was also amiss, shrugging it off before commanding Timus to summon the next batch of heroes. The ancient type vows and accepts the command, sighing while noting to himself that he thought heroes from another world would be able to awaken, but so far all of them have been small fries below level 100. He then resolves to gather those heroes deemed useless, planning to use them as sacrifices to summon the next batch. Kana uses the Feast of the Gods to return to their world, and a bright light flashes. Tsukuru opens his eyes, finding himself alone in an unknown garden, which he deduces isn't in both Forest or Japan. Someone greets him, causing him to turn in alarm and reach for Kurokiri, realizing his blade is gone. The voice reassures him, stating that she is not his enemy, and introduces herself as Ohirume no Mikoto, the god of Japan and one of the pillars. Tsukuru bluntly skips the introduction, asking where he is and what happened to Kana and the others, and the goddess explains that they are in her garden, and that she only called him there briefly while he was returning to the other world, stating that she has several requests to ask of him. She explains that as a god of Japan, she knows everything that's happened there, and every living being that inhabits the land. Thus, she knew about Tsukuru ever since he was in his mother's womb, and is aware of his tragic backstory before being summoned to the other world with his 107 classmates. The boy is angered at this, demanding to know why she didn't do anything about it, but she replies that she couldn't, since canceling the summoning would have caused the energy used in it to lose control, triggering a dimensional explosion that could wipe out Japan. She goes on to explain that the Earth's core would have been damaged, causing the entire world to be destroyed and all life on Earth to be wiped out from existence. Tsukuru is skeptical, but Ohirume insists that what she said is a fact, and that she managed to bestow her blessings upon him. This causes the boy to recall the notification from earlier, and the goddess continues to explain that he has powers that are unthinkable for someone classified as Cook, including his S-rank luck, his ability to remember an unlimited number of new skills, and the supercharged dismember, cooking, and healing food skills. She then passionately declares that her blessings have turned those skills into cheat skills, spitting in the boy's face while yelling. Uncomfortable, Tsukuru points out that she could have helped in a less ambiguous way, noting how many hardships he has endured, but the goddess counters that, as had she released all of her blessing powers when he was still level 1, his body and mind wouldn't have been able to endure it, and he would have exploded. So she adjusted the power of her blessings according to his level. The boy relents, asking her goals, and she explains that she wants him to make it so that the other world can't summon people from Earth anymore. She then screams once again at the fact that they tore a hole in the space-time wall and left it unrepaired, explaining the danger of leaving huge holes open. Ohirume then explains that she wants Tsukuru to destroy any facilities and documents related to dimension summoning in that world, and realizing that the power he had was granted so he could crush those who summoned him, he eerily agrees to do it, while ending those old geezers. He then asks the surprised goddess what his reward will be, and though she nervously counters, stating that she bestowed her blessings on the Feast of the Gods, he calmly thanks her, and states that it's a different matter, all while sipping a delicious tea. Sighing, the goddess explains that though she isn't supposed to do this, she will make an exception, and tell him something interesting about his sister Ayumi. Shocked, Tsukuru asks why she would bring her up, but Ohirume continues undeterred, telling him that she will give him information about the other people who are summoned with him. She reveals that Kana will learn space-time magic in the near future, allowing him to return to Japan whenever he wishes to, but warns him to not let any of his classmates return there. He is surprised by this, but the goddess continues to explain that the disappearance of all those high school students was a major incident, So aside from repairing the hole in the space-time wall, she also had to fix the disappearance of the summoned, going back in time to erase their existence from the world. Thus, she warns him again to not allow them to return, since they don't have any place in Japan anymore, and returning would only bring them suffering. Tsukuru wraps it up by stating that the goddess expects them to live in the other world for the rest of their lives, since returning is pointless. And despite being fine with that, he remembers Kana and Ichinose, and wonders what would happen if someone still wanted to return. She replies that she can't undo what has been erased, but she can give them a new birth record, so they can start a new life in Japan, telling him to contact her when the time comes. Tsukuru is reluctant of being used as a pawn by her, but she merely points out that she can't interfere in that world, and he can't do anything without her blessings, extending her hand and offering that they can help one another, holding his face in her hands while telling him that she's counting on him. A bright light flashes, and Tsukuru opens his eyes to see that he and the group have safely returned to Bull Forest, as the elves rush to greet Antia, regretting that Crafton escaped. The boy angrily notes how Ohirume threw him out after she was done talking, noting how troublesome things have become, and wondering what she wants to tell him about Ayumi. He is pulled from his thoughts by Kana asking if he's okay, and he reassures her, while suggesting that she rest before the penalty of the Feast of the Gods takes effect. As Hana rushes to prepare a bed for her, Tsukuru notes that despite not caring about his other classmates, it is a different story with Ichinose. Kana lost her hearing as a penalty for eating the Feast of the Gods, so everyone communicates with her through writing. The elves inform Antia that they were gone for about a month, and as she compliments them for protecting the village and forest while she was gone, two figures burst in calling out her name. They are Dick, the Dwarven Ancient type, and Kobaru, the Beastfolk Ancient type, and the elves admit that they succeeded in protecting the village because they lent them their strength. They came after sensing Crafton's presence, followed by Antia's disappearance, arriving to protect the village while honoring the four-tribe alliance. They then state that they will now return to their countries, since the human country's problem will spread to theirs as well. Surprised, Tsukuru asks them what happened, and Dick starts to tell the story. Right after Crafton sent them to the third world, the giant fumed, wondering who sent Tsukuru and why he worked with Antia, speculating that the boy was sent by Temis, and that the human ancient type fooled them. Furious, he summoned his underling Kampanen, ordering him to wage war against Temis, even allowing the use of demons. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Luke Sandale, Ichinose cries and trembles, unable to forget the poisoned beastfolk child and reminiscing of Tsukuru. She regrets being unable to do anything other than healing injuries, lamenting her inability to wield a weapon and fight or defy the rulers of the world and escape, having resigned herself to protect her friends while crying. She sobs while missing her parents, when her friend Miki knocks on her door, and insists that she go with her to get some dinner. As they reach the main hall, they notice a commotion, only to see that everyone is staring at their fellow classmate Karayama Kaito entering the hall with a new child slave and a sick grin on his face. He evades questions regarding what happened to his previous child slaves, and starts heading off to his room when Ichinose grabs the slave and confronts the boy. She chastises him for doing cruel things to little children as if they were in a dream, but Kaito tells her to shut up, grabbing the child and insisting that he can do whatever he wants to his slave. He notes that it is only fair for him to get a share of the fun, since they were all summoned to that world, stating that he is trying to adapt, while she only cries and complains, yelling at her to face reality. Miki and another hero intervene, confronting the bully and insisting that he is the worst, while a knight approaches asking about the commotion. Suddenly, a bell starts ringing and one of the kingdom's nobles enters the room, and informs the heroes that the giants and demons have begun their invasion, telling them to depart with the knights to the battlefield. They are soon loaded onto wagons as all the kingdoms send their heroes to the front line. Ichinose wonders why wars start so suddenly, being terrified at the prospect, and wondering what she should do, while Temis speaks to one of the heroes. Miki reassures her, stating that she will protect her, and pointing out that only she can heal their injuries, and that they would be wiped out if she were gone. The nervous heroes join in, reassuring themselves and cheering for Ichinose, who, realizing their commitment, states that they can count on her, and resolves to heal them and stop crying as the wagons head to war. A nobleman informs Temis of the advanced demon and giant invasion. After a month, the human knights and heroes are having trouble facing the huge enemy horde, so the ancient type considers seeking help from the four-tribe alliance before he's in danger. Carnage ensues on the battlefield. Ichinose treats the incoming wounded, but one of the heroes notes that at this rate they will be wiped out, pleading their hero Kujo for a plan. The boy hesitates and considers surrendering, but the other heroes point out that they can't communicate with the monsters. Hard-pressed, Kujo produces a packet containing 10 body-strengthening pills that Temis gave him, explaining that they would work for 10 hours, and that the man warned him to not use them carelessly. The other heroes line up to receive one of the pills, refusing to give one to Miki since she is an archer, prioritizing frontline heroes and telling the berserker Fujisaki to join them in the front. Consuming the pills, the 10 enhanced heroes feel the power within them, and charge headlong into battle. But just as Miki plans to back them up, Kujo coldly states that they are going to flee, much to everyone's shock. He then points out that they are not on their land, and are only fighting to protect their kidnappers, and he is unwilling to continue fighting for their sake. The other heroes start to agree, but Miki asks why he would give the others the pills if he was fleeing. As the pills take effect, he explains to the others that they were meant as a last resort, since they make one go berserk, turning them into combat lunatics until they use up all of their strength. Fujisaki notices a group of demons overrunning Ichinose and Miki, and proceeds to save them, and the pair informs him of Kujo's plan, having ventured to the front line to warn them. The berserker suggests that they leave before their former comrades arrive, and they ask him to join them, but they are soon attacked by one of the enhanced heroes, and the boy stays behind to buy them time. Miki and Ichinose make their way through the forest, hoping to join up with the other heroes by following their footprints and cursing Kujo for his actions. Ichinose stumbles, visibly exhausted, and asks to be left behind, but Miki is having none of it and urges her to carry on. Having run out of arrows, the archer remarks that Kujo had a point in asking who they were fighting for, telling Ichinose that she is fighting to protect her, and asking her to do the same. They then head onwards with resolve, reaching an open area and stumbling into a giantess. They note its size and are surprised when it speaks back to them, and though they consider surrender, their hopes are dashed upon seeing some of their deceased comrades. The giantess then invites them to try and defeat her, promising to let her go if they succeed, and Miki dashes forward with her sword. The giantess easily dodges her and strikes back, but Ichinose instantly heals the damage on Miki's body, allowing her to keep on fighting. Noticing this, the giantess attempts to strike at the healer, but the archer jumps onto her face and stabs her eye in an attempt to protect her. Wounded, the monster grabs Miki and throws her across the ground, grabbing Ichinose before she can heal her back. Heading toward the mangled girl, the giantess announces that it is the end, as she violently stomps Miki. Half a day before Ichinose and the heroes fight the giants, Dick finishes explaining the situation regarding the invasion to Tsukuru, while Kobaru notes that beastfolk in the human country had to evacuate, and is unaware of what happened to the summoned heroes, but believes they will participate in the war. Shocked, the cook turns and declares that he is headed to Luke Sandale, and will return when Kana has recovered. But as soon as he opens the door, he feels a powerful presence, coming face to face with Themis and his retinue. Antia asks the human ancient type for his reason for the visit, and noting that she is safe, he asks for help to protect the humans against the giant invasion. Kobaru agrees with him, but the elf is suspicious and notes that he was the one who gave Mjolnir to Krafton, so he would port them to another world. Noting that he ended up angering Krafton, she deduces that he wants to enlist the help of the other two ancient types, but demands that he apologize to her for trying to harm her. Annoyed, Themis states that he gave the hammer to the giants so they would fight the demons, and didn't expect they would use it like they did, apologizing for Krafton's barbarity, and Antia accepts this apology. Tsukuru wonders how she forgave him so easily, and Kurokiri explains that's how politics work, since no one would benefit from them fighting, and it is best for both to work together to deal with their common enemy. However, the sword is bothered by the fact that Themis made such a bold move to eliminate Antia, knowing the human tribe might cease to exist if he made a wrong move, and wonders if it is related to the summoning. Tsukuru starts to approach the ancient type, being confronted by his retinue, and he states that he cannot let him go home yet. Themis wonders if they have met before, and admonishes him for being violent, but the boy calls him senile, and coldly remarks that he hasn't forgotten that he cast him aside in that place. He then dashes forth, dispatching Themis's retinue, and asks the ancient type if he remembers him, using earth magic against him as the group realizes he is Tsukuru's sworn enemy. Tsukuru avoids a counterattack, noting that Krafton surpassed the ancient type in both power and speed, causing Themis to realize that the boy killed the giant ancient type. The boy then uses dark magic to bind the ancient type, warning that it is not the end, and revealing that he has been training to take revenge on him and everyone around him, as he stabs him in the hand. The now terrified Themis tries to plead with Tsukuru, offering him a country, money, and women, and being rejected by the boy each time, before being stabbed in the shoulder. He then shows the ancient type the skills he still hasn't used, coldly stating that he won't be forgiven after kidnapping people and casting them aside, revealing that Themis coming to him instead of forcing him to search the land is a dream come true. He goes on to ask if the wounds hurt, recalling his torment in Bull Forest, and promising to reenact it on him so he can taste the suffering the boy experienced until he perishes. Kana then approaches and stays his hand, and writes for him to calm down despite being able to talk. Antia also intervenes, asking what the human plans are and noting that Themis lied about the Demon Lord's appearance and summoned the heroes. Themis angrily replies that the Ghost Tribe is a hindrance in the world humans try to rule, and it was only a matter of time before humans obtained the time magic that can oppose that tribe and overwhelm the others. He notes that the humans of that world aren't strong enough, and even the summoned lacked light magic, and preparing to escape, he promises to fulfill that person's wish for humans to rule the world, before burrowing deep into the earth. Tsukuru summons Base to chase after him, unsure if the creature will succeed, and angrily punches the ground at his failure to finish him off, wondering what he meant by that person. He also recalls that he mentioned light magic and realizes that Kana has such a skill. The girl apologizes, but Tsukuru states that it wasn't her fault, and apologizes in turn, before asking the group if they would come with him to save Ichinose. Base apologizes for failing to catch Themis, and Antia notes that he's probably retreated to his dwelling. Kobaru is unsure about the human ancient type's plans, and Dick states that they will need to tell their brethren in the human territory to evacuate. The elves promise to protect their village, and the Beastfolk ancient type states that elves residing in human territory will be welcomed into Beastfolk territory, asking Antia to focus on her goal. Hana starts to plot a route, but unable to take that long, Tsukuru uses flying sheep on equivalent exchange to summon a flying carpet, and they all climb aboard. As they soar, Antia nullifies the wind pressure with her magic, and they soon reach the devastated battlefield. Sanya notices one of the enhanced humans attacking a demon, and Tsukuru notes that their status is strange and they are under something, while also realizing that not all of the heroes are present. He uses presence detection, seeing the giantess holding Ichinose in her hand as she delivers the final blow to the battered Miki. The girl sobs at the loss of her friend, but the giantess looks in surprise, as she realizes Tsukuru has halted the blade with Kurokiri. The boy asks her if she can release the girl and have her army retreat, while Hana feeds Miki healing food. Other giants ask the giantess, named Garbus, why she hesitates on fighting the boy, and are shocked when they hear her confirm what Tsukuru demands. They complain, but she bluntly tells them to shut up, before pointing out his strength, and deducing that he's probably the one who ended Crafton, certain that they wouldn't stand a chance. Tsukuru notes her good eye, and Garbus states that she can't let her sons be dispatched by him, before releasing Ichinose. The girl looks back before running headlong toward Miki, stumbling and being caught by Tsukuru. She then sees her friend, surprised to see her limbs fully healed, and then looks at Tsukuru, who smiles as he reminds her the promise they made to see each other again. Ichinose starts to cry, embracing the boy, while telling him how scared she was and that she missed him, shocking all of the other girls. She then tells him her concerns, apologizing for failing to save him, until the boy tells her that she isn't at fault, and recalling that she was the only one watching over him no matter what happened, even back in Japan. She then hugs him, fainting in his arms. Garbus then asks if they know where Themis is, since she can't go home empty-handed, but Tsukuru merely replies that he would like to know the same. Suddenly, Tsukuru and all other ancient types feel a strong presence, and as the boy asks what the new presence is, Antia explains that it is the impact of the demon ancient type Katablopas's demise. A new demon ancient type has now been born. The winged and horned creature receives the memories of Katablopas, recalling how miserable demons were since the disappearance of their ancient type. Stating that those days are now at an end, the new demon ancient type announces that, now that it has attained new power, they will know the grudge and hatred of the demons. Swearing revenge on Crafton and Themis, the imposing figure orders all demons to turn on their former allies, and begin attacking all the giants present on the battlefield. As the new ancient type promises to burn everyone who trampled demons, Tsukuru wonders what's happening.